All right, it's 5:30 p.m. on Thursday, October 26, 2023. I call to order this Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. This is a hybrid meeting. Present are Kathy, Todd, Lee Shay, Peter, and myself. Oh, and Charles remotely. From staff, we have Ron and Ally and Jonna, maybe? Yes?
Yes, and James.
Okay, very good. Thank you. See you.
And Tiffany.
And Tiffany is our clerk for the evening. And we also have our town council liaison, Dan Enright. Did anybody else? No, good. Our first item of business is approval of the minutes of September 28th. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of the September 28th, 2023 meeting as presented.
I second.
Is there any discussion of the minutes? No, all in favor? Yes, it's unanimous. The minutes are adopted. All right, a second item of business is election of the officers, which we should have done last time, but we didn't. We are down one regular member. Does anybody feel that we should not proceed without Angela? We should kick this? Let's go ahead then.
Do it.
I haven't spoken to Kathy until this moment, but I hope she's willing to continue as vice chair. I would like to continue as chair one more cycle, not forever, I promise, but just to get the master plan done and to have like continuity of the board, I think would make life easier for everybody.
Until council votes in term limits.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we'll discuss that next. We can still hold this election and then discuss that. So however, does anybody else want to nominate themselves or somebody else? No. Would anybody, I nominate Kathy for vice chair.
Second,
All in favor?
All in favor?
Great.
I nominate excuse me.
Easy for you to say.
I'll say.
If you need help, let's spare you.
French fries. Lanny Constantine for chair.
I second.
All in favor? Yeah.
All in favor? Okay, we have a chair and vice chair for our next cycle.
Thank you for stepping up.
Yes.
My
Continuation.
pleasure, huh? All right, staff announcements, Ron.
Don't have any announcement tonight.
Is there any public, Tiffany?
See no hands raised.
Okay, so seeing no public comment on non-agenda items, we'll proceed to our first item. Now, Ron tells me that we have a small item of business involving a disclosure by Lee Shay.
That is correct. I just wanted to let everybody know that I have a former relationship with the applicant for the Hotel Columbia. It was previously performed when I was in my former position, and I helped with some due diligence on this project, which could indicate bias. So I'm just placing this on the record to maintain transparency.
As I understand it, you no longer hold this
No,
position,
correct.
or you don't have any current financial relationship with the owner or the project.
That's correct.
All right, so we need to vote on a determination of conflict. I move that we determine that Lee Shay has no conflict and can sit on this board.
I second.
that-
All in favor? That's, the motion carries.
Excellent. Thank you.
So it's in the code. Lee Shay reached out to me before the meeting. We just wanted to make sure we went through this process. So I think we're good to go now and found no conflict.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping us on our toes, Ally. So, all right, our first work session is the Hotel Columbia PUD amendments work session. This is to review the Hotel Columbia PUD amendments at 301 West San Juan Avenue, Parcel B, Block 1, WTA, resulting from the renovation, rehabilitation, and new addition to the Hotel Columbia. legal parcel B, block 1, West Telluride Edition, address 301 West San Juan Avenue, zone district accommodations. 2, the owner Columbia Telluride LLC. Our applicant is Chris Hawkins from Alpine Planning, and our staff is Ron.
Thank you, Chair and Commission. So this is a work session. It is a public hearing by definition in the land use code. A work session is intended as a request by the applicant prior to any formal development request or application. P and Z has the opportunity to provide a preliminary evaluation of the application as it's presented to the P and Z. But the evaluation or the input given by the P and Z does not vest the applicant or identify any outcome of the formal development review process. This is the Hotel Columbia PUD. It was originally approved in 1994. There have been variations since that original approval. Amendments were approved in 2000, 2006, and 2007. The applicant intends to bring forward another amendment for P and Z consideration. I know the applicant has prepared a lengthy, or not lengthy, but a very detailed, comprehensive history of the PUD and will present some of the changes that they anticipate bringing forward and request your input. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chris in his presentation.
Does anybody have any questions for Ron before we proceed with the applicant? Okay, please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Ron. Thank you, board, and mostly thank you for putting us on the agenda first tonight. Greatly appreciate it. So I know you have a long meeting. We'll get right to it. First, introductions. Chris Hawkins with Alpine Planning.
Bridget Evans, the owner of Hotel Columbia.
And online, we've got Ted Plato, who's going to be speaking to the design. So he'll be popping up later for part of that.
We've got Dylan Henderson of Salt, who's
Correct.
part of the team. Sorry, I didn't hear you going on.
No, that's fine. Thank you. And then also, yeah, so Dylan's on there too, but I think he's just participating. I just got to share my screen real quick. So. So as far as the hotel overview. Sorry, this is not up. There we go. Columbia Telluride LLC is the current owner. It's Bridget and Bruce Evans. And they own all the condominium units in the hotel. It's a mixed use property containing 14 condominium units with 21 keys today. Ron mentioned it was approved in 1994 for the new construction, and in 1995 it got its certificate of occupancy. Sorry, it got its CO in 1996. So the current PUD variations up to 60% site coverage. That's evolved a little bit over time, but now it's a maximum of 60%. The building height is 40 feet for the midpoint of the gable roof and the midpoint of the turrets. There's also a parking waiver and payment in lieu. It waived 2 parking spaces and required 11 on-site spaces in valet parking. So as far as the current PUD public benefits, it's always good to look at that in terms of any change. There's bike racks and landscaping south of San Juan Avenue. That's actually located on Town and Mountain Village property. So this was an offsite improvement. There's also a new spur to access the river trail that was installed. And there's also was a hotel deed restriction that was lifted with the 2006 major PUD amendment that allowed for condominium hotels. Also, one of the public benefit was site design, providing a substantial setback to Aspen Street. And that's on basically the west side to preserve pedestrian experience and light and air to Orr House. There's also provision of land on the southwest corner of the hotel to create a future hammerhead turnaround at the end of Aspen Street. And I actually found a plan set that shows that where you could do, if you wanted to create more of a mall pedestrian experience in front of the gondola, you could install that if you wanted to. Another public benefit, and this has evolved with some of the subsequent amendments, was the restaurant space and tasting cellar. They're to be used to qualified groups for meetings, a minimum of 10 days per year in each space, or 20 days total, excluding peak season days. So right now, in terms of the Hotel Columbia re-envisioning, I'm going to turn it over to Bridget, since this is her brainchild.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks also for being here and allowing us to present, and thanks Ron and the rest of the staff for spending a significant amount of time with us in anticipation of this meeting. So I've been a part-time resident of Telluride since 2000. We spent our summers here. We raised 4 kids here. They're all around 30 now, and I call us more part-time at this point. I became involved in Hotel Columbia in 2008. I was one of 3 owners at the time. And you may remember we redeveloped the property, pretty much an interior renovation only. And we turned the hotel rooms into condos. In 2021, I bought out my partners with the intention of, wholly owning this asset and renovating it. For us, for our family, this is a long-term goal. We want to have this hotel forever. It's really, this sounds so hokey, but it is kind of a love letter, if you will, from us, from me, to Telluride. We want to do right by this property. It is such a little gem of a property, and it is in need of a major 35-year renovation. We had a reserve study done. It's at least 6, 7, 8 years ago, and it identified, all of the segments of the building. The roof is 30 years old. The HVAC has not been touched except for we added some mini splits in 2008, but they're kind of failing at this point. The elevator needs replaced. The roof, but it doesn't really need replaced right now, but it's, be 30 years old. So we'll be replacing the roof. The HVAC, there's, of course, we really want to take a look at that and energy efficiency and upgrades. The snow melt is, I'm not going to say failing, but it's not operating like we would like it to operate. And then inside, we redid the lobby. I did when I bought out the partners in 2021, but the hotel rooms have not been refurnished since 2008. Kind of industry standard is every 7 years. So we're really, committed to doing really a full hall renovation, call it rehabilitation of not only the physical attributes of the property, but also kind of the interior finishes and kind of completely redoing that. It's our goal. It's currently a 3-star property, so our goal would be to a 4-star property. It just offers something in the town of Telluride that is a juxtaposition from some maybe more of the resort properties that exist or might be coming along in Mountain Village.
And she mentioned all this stuff, so I'm just breezing through these slides, so she didn't even need them. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Ted Flato to talk about the design.
Chris, would you go back 1? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I was looking at number 9, the deed restricted units, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
just renovation. It's not.
Yeah.
Anything else.
Yeah, those are old and
They're
tired
dated.
too.
Everything is.
The
Yeah.
kitchenettes are dated.
So Ted, you want to take it over?
Yeah, and Chris, I assume you're going to be advancing these images, is that right?
Yeah, just let me know when, please.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Well, thank you very much. So you know where the location is. This is existing conditions along San Juan and Aspen, and this hotel has significant, important, location relative to the plaza, the Oak Plaza here. And so it is, as Bridget mentioned, this opportunity to really reinvigorate not only the hotel, but the whole experience in this part of town is a really neat opportunity. So we'll go to the next image. So this is the proposed changes to the configuration of the hotel, and we are not, we still have the same amount of site coverage, just a slightly different configuration. So these are some exterior perspectives. So you see the main Columbia Hotel, is this, handsome looking brick and stone hotel, but it had originally a pretty ill-conceived, and it was done at the same time, but it was just a less expensive, and probably was done about the same time as the gondola was probably under construction, but it really didn't address this really important plaza at all. It's made out of a pretty inexpensive kind of fake wood material, doesn't address the street very well, and then had, in addition to that, it had some large air conditioning equipment and restaurant ventilation stuff all down on the ground plane. So it hasn't been a good neighbor. So our idea here is to, as Bridget said, transform the hotel to make a really fabulous, much greater experience here. But on this eastern end, that's probably the main physical change to the building, and that is to take off that what appears to be kind of an addition, and to replace it with a building that in a form that is much more sensitive to the street, to the gondola, and just the kind of some of the utilitarian, simple rusted sheet metal buildings that used to line parts of San Juan, like Smuggler and the Brew Pub a little bit further down. So I'll take you through, and we'll show you some of this imagery here in a second. These are the plans. I don't want to belabor you, but we're too much on this. But the yellow area, well, on the second level, well, the first level, the basement level really is very, very similar, not an enormous amount of changes there. Really, the changes happen on the second level, on level one, where we're reconfiguring the restaurant, and then we're adding this townhouse at the very far eastern end. The yellow represents the hotel rooms. We're going from 21 keys to 18 keys. And a more thoughtful arrangement of how those rooms work. And then this kind of tan color is this townhouse that would be on the eastern end, that has 4 bedrooms in it. So we'll go. So these are the plans, which I think we'll click through these pretty rapidly. That shows the hotel. This is the restaurant and kitchen, townhome entry. Go to the next, and then these are these 18 keys to the left, and then the townhouse configuration. The main living space is on the third level, and the hotel is 4 stories, so the townhome is just 3 stories. So it steps down kind of thoughtfully in scale with the neighborhood. And then we have this mechanical parapeted space that's on the roof of the third floor that allows us to pull that air conditioning and ventilation equipment from down at the ground, where it's problematic, to up in this upper area that's now shielded. And so smells and noise, et cetera, are taken away from the neighborhood and kind of put into a place where it has a lot less impact. And then these are some of the buildings that we're looking at that are influential. The gondola building, incredible. And then further down San Juan, you see, some of the other buildings that used to line where once the railroad tracks were, like Smugglers and the Brew Pub. So that picking up on that rusted metal, and then simple alpine shapes is what we were thinking about. Then go finally to, and so now, so this is, these are images of the hotel. Click through the next one. This is that the eastern end, which you can see, it was, it's just kind of been a haphazard, and it just hasn't really taken advantage and been a good citizen in this very, very important corner. So then go to the next, I'm sorry. And so then these are elevations along San Juan, showing you this new addition. We're adding, with this new addition, we're adding a little over 500 square feet to the overall size of the hotel, so very, very minimal. And what we're proposing is a form and a shape that is much more thoughtful and respectful and complementary of this important plaza. So we'll go to the next. So then these are just as-built conditions along the edge of the hotel. That's that eastern end, and then these are the proposed changes that we're suggesting, just elevation, form, and shape, and how it steps down the upper level, because the upper level of the townhouse is mainly a big public room. We can end up having breaking down the scale of that upper level by making it feel kind of not as solid. Then go to the next. Then finally, this is that perspective from the plaza. We're envisioning, a very, simple building shape and feel that belongs in the spirit of the gondola building again, and some of the other more utilitarian buildings that are along San Juan. So, thank you.
So as far as the PUD changes and public benefit, we hope that's kind of the focus of discussion tonight for input. But again, demolition of that eastern non-brick portion, and as Ted mentioned, it's about 587 square feet that's being added. And that is really is the focal point and catalyst for this renovation. This isn't a cheap project. And that, putting that residential multifamily townhome on the end, the intent, as I understand, is not to sell it, but instead to add value to the property to justify all this work. So adding that multifamily dwelling on the east side of the building as a mixed-use redevelopment with the entry from San Juan Avenue and the sidewalk, reducing the number of hotel keys from 21 to 18 units. And that creates larger average hotel units in keeping with the 4-star designation. And again, the proposed average hotel room sizes range from 330 to 550 square feet, and an average size of 445 square feet.
And let me just clarify one thing on that. The average square footage of the current keys is not all that different, but the range is much broader. It's like a 309 to 696. And if you're trying to go for a 4-star rating, you can have a couple of smaller rooms, but you can't have a third of the building be smaller rooms. And so even though the average, I think it's 458 square feet when it's 18 keys, it's just a much more uniform kind of property. We are also, I actually didn't mention, getting rid, we are offering and want to abandon the hotel condo concept and move this to just a hotel concept. And that will allow us to remove what are really inferior, like hot plates, smooshed in the corner kind of thing, and be able to kind of recapture that space into nicer hotel rooms.
Again, she already alluded to this, but again, amend the current condo map to get rid of the condo units in each room, but still keep the condominium community. And it would ideally, it hasn't quite been solidified, but one for the multifamily unit, one for the hotel unit, one for the restaurant unit. That's the sort of concept that's being batted around now. So that's a good change.
2 deed restricted.
And plus the 2 deed restricted units would be condominiumized as well.
Yeah, they're condos.
Yeah, so. Again, converting the little use restaurant public use benefit. And this was required by the second PUD amendment. And that was just added as a requirement because the site coverage went from 57% to 60%, so it's only adding 3%. And so with that, it triggered that public benefit. And so it really is a very little used benefit. Only 2 nonprofits have used the tasting cellar in the last 10 years. MTI was the last one to use the tasting cellar in January of 2022. And to the best of our knowledge, no group is asked to use the entire restaurant space. There's no current bookings or inquiries, and groups, it turns out they want more modern meeting facilities, which are available like in the AHA building. And so that's just there when you have that ease of use of the library meeting room where you already have the AV set up and you can just come in and plug in your computer and not have to schedule around, peak times and things like that. So the replacement public benefit, again, we know we're going to have to do that. So there's hopefully kind of the meat of the work session, converting the property to a true 4-star hotel. We understand the code doesn't have hotels as public benefits anymore, but hopefully you still recognize the importance of the hotel district along San Juan Avenue and keeping this, even though it's not in the code. Replacing the sidewalk and snowmount system around the hotel, and that's on the property. As we understand it right now, there's not even insulation underneath that snowmount. So this is where some of those energy savings come in. And then replacing the sidewalk on the north side of San Juan Avenue from the hotel property to the corner, that will not be snow melted, but that's kind of the range of things. And then again, the building renovation will be replacing a lot of the mechanical equipment with efficient green building systems that are designed by REG Engineering to reduce the carbon footprint of the hotel. And that's proposed as a public benefit where you can do, again, this is a new one, so I think we're probably the first PUD in front of you maybe with this. Significant reduction of climate impacts that exceed building code standards. And again, this is right out of the code that may include the following examples. Retrofits of existing buildings to meet green building standards. REG, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they basically helped create the Telluride Energy Mitigation Program. They're kind of industry leaders in designing green building design, and that's probably one of the main reasons I think that Bridget brought him onto the team. This letter that was in your packet talked about the mechanical changes that were fairly concrete that will be done and we know will reduce the carbon footprint. By the time we get back in front of you, I think we could have a more clear picture of what that means in terms of significant carbon reductions. So there's some key work questions for the work session. Would really like to hear from you tonight. Are the proffered public benefits in line with the proposed elimination of public meeting space, adding the multifamily dwelling and changes to the building massing? How do you view and respond to the removal of the old massing and the addition of 587 square feet? And that's just 3% of total building. How do you view the proposed reduction in keys from 21 keys to 18 keys? How do you view the conversion of 14 condominium hotels to 1 unit? Again, that kind of reconfiguration. Are hotel units still important to maintain as a public benefit? This last question, I didn't touch on this earlier, but the planning directors made a code interpretation that there's no parking requirement for restaurants in AC2, which is great. That significantly reduces the parking requirement for this property, but we want to make sure that everyone's on board with that and understands that interpretation and supports it, because that's very important to our program going forward. And then last question, which is again the catalyst for the project: do you support the addition of a multifamily townhouse unit that rationalizes the overall hotel redevelopment? And I can put these back up in sequence however you want it, and we're here to answer any questions you might have this evening, and appreciate all the time you let us have to make the presentation today.
Thank you.
Can I just?
yes,
add
of
one
course.
thing? Again, thanks to Ron for working with us. Maybe it feels complicated to you guys. I don't know. It's a really it's a Rubik's Cube. This building is a Rubik's Cube, and we need to get going, and we are going to start expending significant monies to, kind of pursue what we're showing here. So please, if we can get the answers to these questions, I know it's just a work session. I know, that you're not held to that, but it will, we really need that kind of info to move forward. So thank you.
Okay, can I have a couple questions.
Sure.
First off, I could not tell exactly from the drawings, so I hope you can answer this. Will the size of the restaurant be made smaller, the dining area by the change in the east thing?
So
No.
we're- no,
Um,
okay, go ahead.
It looks like it will.
Fewer tables.
It looks like it will, because the townhouse entry is replacing, whereas there are now tables, as I understand.
Yeah, the restaurant, Ted, I'm gonna just show this, the restaurant space right now. The only thing there might be a slight decrease on is the current outdoor dining patio where that goes away, but. In terms of that, I couldn't tell you the number of seats by that.
Well, it's about a
change.
quarter of the restaurant right now, right?
Square footage.
Yeah.
Is
Square
a
footage.
measurable thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's in that table. Is it in that table? We have this. While we're looking for it. let
Okay.
me explain.
Existing
We
to
are
propose.
limited to 15% of the
Right.
building. So that's about 3,000 square feet, I think, in the restaurant. And so we are hiring an interior hospitality interiors firm that has experience with both hotels and restaurants. And a restaurant kind of designer to look at the kitchen. And we will be looking at the lobby. What is now the lobby, the restaurant, yes, you're right, we lose what is kind of the patio. But we also, if you look here, you'll see in the basement, the red, that's what is the tasting cellar right now. So, that would potentially become something, they have some good ideas for that. And, there's some reconfiguring there, but we want to build out the maximum restaurant square footage that we can. And that's 3,000 square feet,
if I
And what is the limit? What is the 15% limit from?
15% of the
It's
total
the,
square.
it's a AC2 zone district
Okay.
limitation that's absolute, you can't exceed more than, and again, that's gross floor area. I just also note that tasting room, you can't really put people down in there right now very effectively because you're gonna have bottles of wine missing. Cause it's kind of just become a really big wine cellar, too,
But they
so.
have some good, we might come back with some.
But I'm just saying for the renovation of this is more of a space that can be used for true dining.
So I think the answer is yes, it will reduce it by the orange part will go away.
It might move around, the lobby might be smaller and because for us, we need 3,000 square feet for the restaurant to be full. We
Yeah.
really can't lose seats from what is there now.
Well,
So,
restaurants are coming to be a sort of public benefit, like they're
Yeah.
not really, but we like them.
Yeah.
So we would prefer that you not reduce the restaurant.
it's a 90-seat restaurant right now and we will try to,
It's a good question point, so thank you.
Yeah.
Secondly, I don't understand in what way is the new addition mixed use? It seems like it's condos or you
It-
call it a
it's a
multifamily
single
townhouse.
family.
Yeah, it's basically the definition of mixed use in the code talks about more than one, talks about a multifamily dwelling and commercial existing together. In this case, we have three uses or mixed use. The multifamily dwelling, the commercial restaurant and the hotels makes them.
Oh, so the whole thing is a mixed use development.
Yes.
Okay, not the addition. The addition itself is residential purely.
It is residential, but the bigger umbrella of classification, there's a definition for mixed use in the land use code.
All right, and finally, this multifamily, are those condos?
The townhouse,
The thing you're building on the end?
Yes.
yes, one
One
condo,
unit.
yes.
All right, so in what way is it multifamily?
It by definition, Ron, you want to explain?
Yeah, and that's one of our nuances in the land use code. If it's a residential unit in a mixed use development, it's considered a multifamily unit.
Ah, so
Even
it's
though it may be
multifamily because
one-
it's Kind of associated with the hotel.
Yes.
Okay,
That's common laws.
all right. Other people's questions?
Will the multifamily unit be part of your rental pool?
Yes, we would like to, we want to have the ability for it to be free market so that we can actually free up some capital. Probably borrow against it. We have no intention of selling it. We absolutely have an intention of it being in the short-term rental pool, part of the hotel.
Okay.
And I know we have to get a license, just like everyone else, but that's our intention.
And with that, how are you going to deal with the parking that comes with that?
That's part of what we'll have to present with the plan for you, because the elimination of the restaurant parking space frees up parking on site for this unit. Above, there'll still be room for above and beyond what's required for the hotel and for the space on site in the end. But when we submit, I'll give a breakdown and a parking table of here's what's required by code and here's what's provided on site, and you'll have a diagram. And you have to understand the parking on the site is valet parking. It doesn't close to anything you've ever do. It works. It's been working for over 20 years now, a long time. But we'll show you how it works.
Yeah, we've planned it out and we've got historical information, so we feel good about the park.
Peter, did you have a question?
I just am fairly confused about the gives and the gets. I know this is the Fifth Amendment. I don't have any prior knowledge about how it got here, the many steps and along the way. I want a summary for our consideration of what our gives and gets. You guys highlighted heating sidewalk and replacing sidewalk and something else off site. I'm curious to hear from staff and to try and understand if we're going from 21 keys to 18, I don't see that as a public benefit initially. I understand the concept of why you're borrowing from some to get a more consistent count. You've made that clear, but I would like someone to clarify whether that is a measure of public benefit or a reduction for this. And I'm curious, Ron, how you
I
view
can
your
try to
baskets and
summarize
how
from what's
full
in
and
the
equal
staff.
they are.
I
Yeah,
can summarize what's in the staff memo. So originally 1994, 24 or 20 hotel units. Variation increasing the maximum height 25 feet to a maximum height of 40 feet. Increasing the maximum site coverage of 40% to 57%. Public benefits with the 1994 approval included the landscape surface and the bike racks south of the hotel with access to the river trail. And again, that was mentioned by Chris, that is the area that's actually owned by the town of Mountain Village as part of the gondola. And that's an agreement that was made back in 1994 that established that as a landscaped area. And my understanding is that's not going to change. Is that correct?
That improvement exists today. There's no intent to change it.
Yeah. Let's see, as part of the approvals, parking reductions were granted to allow 11 parking spaces with valet parking rather than the 21 parking spaces that would have otherwise been required. Currently, the applicant indicates 15 on-site parking spaces. PUD was amended in 2000 to include the enclosure of the outdoor dining patio, increasing the site coverage from 57% to the full 60%. And then since the 2000 amendment, the hotel has remained essentially as it was approved. However, amendments were granted in 2006 and in 2007, modifying mainly the condominium arrangements or the condominium regime to hotel condominium. In 2007, the PUD condominium arrangement was modified again to include 17 condo hotel rooms, 1 penthouse condo hotel with 4 rooms for short-term accommodations, restaurant and bar, 2 employee units, and the property management use. And again, that's currently what's in place. The changes that are being suggested by this presentation include changing the regime to more of a hotel rather than condominium hotel units, reducing the number, and you're correct, that's not necessarily a public benefit. But it does standardize the room, the size of the rooms, And then elimination of the public benefit that was previously mentioned as a part of the meeting space, the cellar
Yeah.
basement. So that
So
would go
how do you,
away.
how do you view the baskets? That's my question.
Well, again, staff doesn't typically give a
Let's not talk about a
recommendation.
recommendation. Let's just talk about what,
So Ron, I think
Yeah.
what you're saying is, what are the new public benefits? And are these they? This is it? This is
Mhm.
This,
Getting?
this is the list plus the significant reduction in carbon
All right,
footprint
so
of the hotel.
so-
that's a nice idea.
converting the
Okay,
property
yeah.
to a four-star hotel is not a public
You're
benefit.
going into comments. We don't-
Wait. I want to know, do you believe, are you taking the position that these are the public benefits here?
No,
plus
the first one is not per the code of public benefit. You as the Planning and Zoning Commission only have the public benefits that are in the PUD regulations. And so the last 2 stars count, I believe, as public facility benefit for the sidewalk. That's public facility. Again, that's your discussion, right? Not mine. And certainly the reduction of carbon footprint is a public benefit. And historically, public benefits are required for PUD variations. And so we're not requesting any new variations here, but we realize we're changing the use, the mass, and eliminating the public meeting space component. So we knew we had to bring some replacement benefit to the table, so to speak.
And you are adding square footage, are you not? Is that
587 square feet, yes.
That would be as of right.
It's not a variance, it's by right. So you can go up to a 20,000 square foot building on this site. We're well under that. We're around, I think, 16,000 square feet right now. So.
Todd, do you have a question for the applicant?
Well, it comes in the same way as Peter. But when you do come with an application, I think that piece needs to be much clearer.
Okay.
We're eliminating the cellar. We're changing the usage of the eastern end of this property. We're reducing number of keys. Those are on the negative side, if you will. On the positive side, we have X, Y, and Z. The second star replacing that sidewalk. We can get rid of that dang curb cut
Yeah.
that trips everybody every
Yeah.
time. That is a major public benefit.
We have talked, I have talked with the neighbors of the, building on the corner of Oak and San Juan.
It's my office, yeah.
Okay. And,
People.
they're interested
Oh, when-
in, there's an elevation change there and they also are interested in participating in this.
And there's a bigger town capital project down here that involves the gondola redevelopment, the Oak Street Plaza, and and this was Ted Plato's idea. I don't want to take credit for this, but to try to level that street across. I mean, that's not within the scope of what we're talking about, but that's a big capital project. That would make that whole experience down there so much nicer as a pedestrian experience. But anyway, that aside, hopefully we're clear enough now, at least on the replacement benefits, because even just the elimination of the restaurant use and tasting cellar use for 3% site coverage, we're proposing a significant reduction in carbon footprint in these sidewalk things here. And so it's really is that enough, or do we need to provide more, is kind of the test we're asking today. And I know that's hard to gauge because I can't tell you we're reducing our carbon footprint by 10%. August can do those calculations and he can tell us exactly, here's the carbon footprint of the hotel today. Here's the carbon footprint of the hotel after redevelopment. My gut reaction is that's going to be a substantial number. But significance, till you know that data, how can you guess it?
But
Is it-
am I still allowed to talk or not?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, but, so I have, broached the subject with Ron and also with the town of Mountain Village. I think our property is uniquely suited to do something in that area as part of a public benefit. But of course, we need to have a conversation, as I said to Mountain Village, who they are interested in having that conversation. I don't have a preconceived notion of what to offer, nor what I can afford. We view this as a really modest kind of change to the building, 587 square feet that, you know, stays within no additional variances, et cetera. Yes, going from 21 to 18 keys, but it's no longer a public benefit and it makes a better property. We're down zoning in a way the property from hotel condo to hotel only. But we do need the answer.
Or
like the
upzoning,
keys.
depending on your point of view.
Yeah, okay, okay. Well, certainly value wise, I can attest to that, but the keys, for example, you know, we really need that answer because it's too completely, you know, we've got to start, you know, getting REG in there to design the HVAC, to move the walls, to, you know, figure out how much plant we need on the roof. That one's a pretty important one for us to move forward.
You have a question?
Yeah, do you know how many more or less beds will be in what you're proposing versus what you have now? Because we don't always care about
interesting.
keys
Okay.
as we care about beds.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna have a 4-bedroom unit now. And, you know, so I think that's important information for us.
Yes, I have to answer that honestly, though. It'll be 18 keys. Sorry, and we'll probably end up doing a 3-bedroom rather than 4-bedroom. You know,
Okay.
we've got to fuss with that. But, so yes, we absolutely plan to rent those every night that someone will stay there forever. But it is a free market townhouse.
Right,
I mean,
we
yeah,
understand.
so we have no intention of ever selling that or living in it. And it's really more of a hospitality, you know, when you get into the design, it's not, you know, someone's home, it's really more like hospitality asset. So yes, you're right, we would be providing, I think you could count on 3 for sure. And yeah, that would get you back to the beds.
Right.
And this is kind of centered around that question is, are hotels still considered a public benefit and required for PUDs? And I know you still have to account for PUD history and creation, which is probably what you're doing here, looking at the original approvals and, you know, how it was granted, and I get that part, but in the end, there's still gonna be 18 rooms with, you know, at least a king or, you know, whatever size bed in it there, and plus the ones that might voluntary undeed restricted townhouse unit that would just be in the rental pool. But hopefully we can, you know, if a hotel's not considered a benefit now, we're looking at replacement benefits that fit under the code instead, just so we're kind of, just my thought on it going forward, because it's easier to do a facility or significant carbon reductions, knowing that's a benefit today versus looking at hotel rooms, which we know are no longer benefits now. So
Can somebody clarify, what Chris is talking about, whether hotel room is a public benefit or if it's not per this PUD or
It's not,
For this
it's
conversation.
not in the criteria as far as a PUD is concerned
Do-
in the land use.
Now,
we
it
took
used
that
to
on-
be.
It's changed it.
but it was
It was
in
very
the
much
past prior to.
desired when this.
Okay, I consider it a public benefit, but I've just not read the memo.
Yeah.
Sounds like, okay.
the PUD required a hotel deed restriction. That was the first approval of the town in 1994. That's where it originated, because the town wanted hotbeds by PUDs at that point in time. So that's why there's going to be a little bit of a hybrid conversation about this with
But
this
Ken,
amendment.
Yeah, I mean, this is a plea as a hotel owner. I'm speaking on behalf of all hotel owners in Telluride right now. These things are beasts, you know, the capital requirements for something that's opened, you know, a little more than half the year is really, really hard. And, you know, the level of investment we are bringing to this, and I don't want to own a condo hotel. That's not what I want. I don't want to minimize the check-in desk to the littlest thing you can possibly have, so that it's just kind of this non-branded hotel. We want to make a really lovely gem of a hotel that Telluride can be proud of, you know, like the new Sheridan. That's something that, you know, really becomes beloved like Cosmos is right now. That is really a good asset for the town. That's our intention. And so we're going to make sure we have good ski storage. We want to give those services. So it's a little off topic, but you know, that is what is behind kind of some of these moves that we're trying to make here.
All right, do we have more? Alicia?
Well, that was gonna be my question is, I know that it's not a public benefit to take it to a 4-star, and you explained that the room sizes and the continuity and the increased size, but what are the other things that a 4-star would include? Is it 24-hour room service? Is it being open at certain
I have
hours?
like 4 pages here,
Yeah.
so they look at everything, there's no hard and fast rule. But for example, we could never be 5-star because we don't have a spa or, a pool or something like that. And there's a little leeway in how they analyze it. But it's everything from what's the arrival, what's the landscaping, what's the upkeep, what's the interior design, what are the finishes, is it wood, stone, what's the elevator look like? Do the rooms have certain criteria?
Sure.
Do you have 2 sinks in a bathroom versus 1? And yes, you have to have some kind of food service on site.
Okay. And I know I've been in those deed restricted units. I had a friend that lived in, they definitely need updating.
Yes.
The parking is always going to be something you'll have to tackle. And then that sidewalk is right in front of my office, and I can't tell you the amount of people I've seen slip in ski boots. So that's a public benefit right there.
Yes.
So yeah, thank you.
Do we have more questions? Or should we go to discussion? Let's go to discussion,
Okay, yeah.
unless people have questions for Ron or the applicant.
Normally, I would say sidewalks are not necessarily a public benefit, they're a requirement, but this is a treacherous sidewalk.
Treacherous.
I have a friend who broke her leg on it last year. It wasn't her ski boots, it was the sidewalk. And I'm always debating about whether I want heated sidewalks. I love walking on them, but the carbon footprint of them scares me, so I'm always like, and I think we've all said or implied, whether you're a 3-star, 5-star, 4-star hotel really is an amenity that comes and goes over the ownership or over the decades of the building. But what I like are real hotels, not condo hotels. And I like the scale of what this hotel has been so far, and I think will remain. So I think having something like that instead of something that's mostly giant condos with, a bunch of rooms, the minimum amount of hotel rooms jammed in to make it an amenity. That's why we stopped that being a PUD benefit. And I think you're going to end up with this about the same number of beds, which is almost as important as the keys. If you have a bigger room in it, but it's still going to sleep the same number of people, that's fine. I think the massing's okay. If part feels different, I'll listen very closely to that. My big thing is the public benefit meeting space. I don't care whether it's a room in the basement or if it's part of the dining room upstairs. I used to go to events in that space all the time when it was first approved. It was also an era where AV was not a big deal, but the kind of events I went to were more like parties, and AV was not part of the party. And some of them were private parties, but some of them were a variety of groups around town. And what I think is important about this space is, sure, everybody's buying their drink, whether it's non-alcoholic or not, or the host is buying the drinks and the food, but that the room is free. The room at the AHA School is not free. It's quite expensive. The room, I don't know what the TSRC pricing a few blocks away from you in the depot is going to be, but it's going to be expensive. We have bills to pay at AHA. They have bills to pay. The Sheridan is quite expensive when you rent the show bar. So I think the fact that there's a free room, and if you want to come back with different proposals of times of day or times of year that it's available, I would listen to that. But I think the reason it's never used is it was like secret. I didn't think about it, that, oh, I wonder why nobody's using that. I wasn't running around town telling every single person I know that has a community group, do you know you can get this room for free?
Yeah.
But I think was secret. And I'm sure that the restaurant operator is probably happy or not happy.
That's
to do
exactly
this.
what I was thinking. Yeah, 10 days is nothing.
So but I think a free space like this. And I understand we don't get peak season for the free use, but we don't get only April, May, October, and November. you see that we get some moderate season, if not the high season, when groups. And I think if this was well known, there would be a lot of community use, and I think it's valuable. And that you can just be really clear, this is for a party. This is not for an AV setup, you know. Don't expect that. And we do have spaces now that have every AV thing in the world when it works.
Yeah, somewhat along those same lines, but back to what we were talking about earlier, your application. And I'm not opposing this. I don't stand opposed to it at all. But that give and get, as Peter put it, that's what P and Z has to rule on in terms of the PUD to change it. We have to see that there is benefit. So I would concentrate on eliminating the hazards in the sidewalk. That's a big benefit in my mind. The carbon footprint reduction. And as you look at how you are redeveloping the interior, if you can provide that space in some other format than the cellar and the wine cellar and its valuable inventory. I sat on the Flights Alliance board for the last, God knows how many years. Always wanted to walk out with a bottle. It wasn't known, but if you can, you know, like
Make it work.
today's lobby could be a nice meeting space if it's not interrupting either the restaurant or the hotel. You can do different kinds of things. I would encourage you to think about that as you develop your application.
Good point.
Other comments? Peter?
I might misheard, but the restaurant space is not a part of the public benefits today, or has not been in the past, correct?
It is both
It
the
is.
restaurant and tasting cellar and yes.
Okay. So I feels like some of the portions of this, which I understand well, are out of sequence with what you can speak to with clarity about the size of, say, the restaurant, how it is, you know, partially in the basement or these things, but trying to maintain or not see that be reduced seems valuable. It feels like a notable public benefit. I would agree that what you've described sounds as a hotel, as opposed to a condo hotel, sounds nicer, and these rooms are going to be nicer. I think getting something that seems or is reliable from REG about your energy usage would be helpful, and what you can commit to or whatever. It just seems like that's further down, and what they would be able to give you now would be comparatively aspirational, and that sounds good and could be a good pitch, but I don't know how that gets put into a approval as a part of that, it being a benefit. And it makes me nervous just in general, because how's that going to work in 30 years when the next person comes along to do the necessary to keep it up. But that was all.
Lisa, do you want to comment?
No, I agree. I think that the public benefit is extremely important as far as the meeting space down below. And if you could somehow make that so it fits your vision, and also has, you know, if it's for nonprofits or whatever it is, a place that we could all come together, it'd be great.
So let me just comment, you can comment again. So what I'm hearing is that you're taking away the public benefit of the free room, which we have a difference of opinion about how well it's used. You're taking away some of the public benefit possibly of the restaurant, and you're replacing it with carbon reduction, which could be good, although the sidewalk is going to boost your carbon output. So I when this comes back, we'd really like, I agree with Todd, I would like to see this with some numbers. And Peter said this too, on the carbon, we need some numbers. And then this is a new thing, we are starting to decide what is significant and what is sustainable over time, to go to Peter's point. So it's hard to predict, to be honest, how this board will come out on this, because we haven't had a lot of those applications yet. And inclusion of that was much discussed, and how we would measure it. The sidewalk, yes, it would be great to make it better to walk on, but you may have to do that anyway. So I would also like you to specify what you're doing that goes above and beyond what you're required to do when you do all this construction, because if you destroy the sidewalk, you're going to have to fix it anyhow. So those are my points. I just want you to, I think, to go, it's what Todd said earlier, we need clear list of the public benefits. And in my mind, that does not include, although I think it's great that it's going to be a nice hotel, that does not include making it a 4-star hotel. It might, we do probably like some things, like we like hotels more than we like condos, but it's not an official public benefit. So, you want to say something more, Kathy?
Well,
And Charles.
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, Charles,
Yeah.
Charles has his hand up. Sorry, Charles.
I think I kind of agree with what everyone else is saying, and I would just, just to give my input back to the applicant that, I think a sidewalk is, just having a sidewalk is not a public benefit. I mean, if you're going to do something truly above and beyond with the sidewalk, not that you're just making it so it's people can walk on it. That should just be, that's a given. And then just on the reducing the carbon footprint, as I see the public benefit, you need to really go to a significant level, and that's not just, to me, replacing old outdated equipment with today's technology. I mean, that's the cost of doing business or owning a piece of real estate. I mean, HVAC systems run out, have a useful life, and simply to replace it with the current technology, I would like to see you're going to a level above that, for me to see it as a public benefit, not just replacing 30-year-old equipment. That's it.
Thank you, Charles. Thanks for participating. Any other comments? Okay, Kathy.
I would hope that the meeting space that you retain in whatever format you come back should not be just for nonprofits. It should also be for community groups. We have a lot of very loosely formed, not a 501c3 nonprofits. And I think if you check with the library, you'd find that all of their meeting spaces, from teeny tiny to pretty big, are full a whole lot of the time. They close early in the evening and you have to pay extra to stay late, and you don't have alcohol there. So you're offering a different thing, and obviously your tenant for the hotel, for the restaurant, will make a profit on the drinks, whatever NA or A drinks. Then I think we haven't really made a restaurant a public benefit, but what we did do to encourage restaurants and the retainage of restaurants is that if you want to propose a restaurant with no parking, it's a restaurant forever. It can't just suddenly go retail 2 years later or 5 years later. So I think if, when you're working through your parking, working with Ron, but that's where we came from. We want to encourage restaurants and retain the restaurants we have, but we're mostly doing that through our parking waiver. But it also means that it's kind of, parking will have to come back if it ever stops being a restaurant. Then the other thing, when we're talking, it suddenly dawned on me, we're talking about all the energy savings. We're moving towards an all-electric future. REG is based in a town where they've already adopted that all new construction is 100% electric. So I think if you come back with an all-electric proposal, certainly for the new part, if not the whole building, that to me would be a significant, you would be, meeting our goals about 10 years ahead of when we want our community. You know, we were kind of looking at 2030 for being all electric. I think we're probably looking more like at 2035. I'm not even sure that San Miguel Power can come up with enough electric if we wanted to be all electric tomorrow and had the money to buy and rewire for that. But I think that's my input is that's a really important thing, and I know REG can do it. The other important thing is REG told me on one of my jobs, you can put solar cells anywhere and they'll work. They might not work at 90% efficiency or whatever, but you've got your nice new roof that could lend itself to being a solar cell roof. The other roof is maybe too complex to, but you know, come back with some solar, come back with lots of electric or all electric and the real calculations. And I think that would be interesting to me at least. And I think if you can tell us that you have about the same amount of beds. The one other thing I wanted to say is I've always preferred real hotels to condo hotels, but I like the mix of a whole separate condo where you have the advantages of a condo of a real kitchen and dining area, and kind of a private entrance, all of that, and then you have a hotel. So whatever market, you know, so a family coming can rent whichever one they want. You only have one of the other. And I think that's an important benefit. I kind of hate the things that are half condos and half little tiny hotel rooms. But that's just me.
Are there other comments to help the applicant along here? No,
Any
all
other
right.
questions for us? We didn't address?
I guess my only question is, for the public meeting space, if it just came down with that, the basement level, that room being available to groups, does that make sense? Just so the restaurant operator could be more open for commercial business the rest of the year? For that smaller private space downstairs?
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's not
That's what it is
actually
now.
full of wine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
or it's glass
Hey,
where you're
hey.
drooling, but yeah.
Honor system.
I mean, I don't know what Bridget's intent was on that, but that might be easier to kind of isolate it
Yeah,
down in
I
that
think-
area.
I take a look. I mean, I heard you.
Okay.
I mean, we want to be, you know, we want to be a community.
Sure.
Hotel. So let us go work on this.
All right.
I have one more thing on my list.
Mhm.
And Ron, you tell me if I don't need to ask this, but we're okay taking the 14, I think it is condos and turning it into one hotel unit, right? That everybody understood that's what we're doing. That's turning.
Yeah, I think that's, I think that's
Yeah,
wonderful,
yeah.
but I don't think it counts in our code book. There'd be a
Yeah.
benefit,
Okay.
but I think
Yeah.
that's a brilliant. thing.
We're agnostic.
Yeah.
Switzerland.
All right, well, thank you for all the time you
Yeah.
spent on this tonight.
Yeah,
and your
Thank you.
comments.
Thank you very much. All right, our next item is a review and recommendation item. Lucky you, Ron. This is a review and recommendation regarding amendments to Land Use Code Article 9, Division 1, Planning and Zoning Commission, and Division 2, Historic and Architectural Review Commission, for the purposes of amending commission eligibility requirements and imposing term limits. Staff members, Ron.
Thank you, Chair and Commission. So my presentation is going to be very brief. I'm just going to kind of introduce this, but Tiffany is going to present this item. This is something that was brought forward initially from the town council as a part of the justice and inclusion, and I know I'm going to forget one of these, but anyway, the justice,
Jed,
equity,
Equity,
diversity and
Mhm.
inclusion action plan to kind of broaden the membership of those that represent the town. So it affects Article 9 of the Land Use Code, appointed boards and commissions, Division 1, Division 2, that identifies the composition and the terms for each of the members. Your role as the Planning and Zoning Commission is to provide a review and recommendation on anything that is amended in our land use code, and the text that is being presented will modify, establish new term limits if it's approved by the town council, and will identify somewhat more broadened membership requirements. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tiffany, who has a much more detailed presentation.
I don't have a projection, but thank you. Ron. Yes, so as Ron stated, this is coming from town council and they've been talking about how they can expand eligibility on our boards and commissions. And to give a little background on the specific term limit piece, back in 2021, town council referred a ballot question or charter amendment to the electorate. And previous to 21, our charter stated that there shall be no term limits on any of our boards and commissions. So back in 21, council started discussing the possibility of imposing term limits on boards and commissions. We explained to them that because our charter states that there shall be no term limits on any boards or commissions, that requires a question before the electorate, because only the electorate can amend our charter. So they referred that along with a lot of other charter amendments to the electorate, and it was adopted. So that allows council to at least have the conversations, to start the conversations about term limits. So in addition to term limits, council would like to discuss the eligibility, expanding eligibility on all boards and commissions, and then the composition of boards and commissions. The composition piece for Hark and P and Z, we're not recommending any changes to the current composition. Eligibility requirements. Currently in the charter, it states that Hark and P and Z members must be registered electors of the town of Telluride. And then you look at the land use code, and the land use code says that Hark and P and Z members must be qualified electors of the town of Telluride for at least a year preceding appointment. So one of the thoughts was, in the past few years, we have had a few applicants that moved from Mountain Village to the town of Telluride that were interested in serving on Hark or P and Z. And because they hadn't lived in town limits to be that qualified elector, they were not eligible to apply for Hark or P and Z. So if you look at the red line included in the packet materials, one of the thoughts on how we can expand
What page are
the
you
eligibility.
on?
I'm sorry.
What page are you on?
Oh, I don't have the whole packet. It's just, the attachment to Ron's memo has land use code amendment, and then it's the
We're about
portions.
page 45.
Thanks, Todd. So there's the sections from the land use code for the Planning and Zoning Commission and Hark. And we tried to propose amendments so that they would match and be consistent across both. So I'll jump to the qualifications first. So right now, under section 9-1-9-103, member qualifications under P and Z. Currently, the land use code states that members of P and Z shall be qualified electors of the town for at least a year prior to the appointment. The qualified elector isn't the same as a registered elector, and we want to make that consistent with the charter. So the suggestion there is to change it to registered elector. But then, because we have had interest from people from the Mountain Village that moved to town that weren't eligible, the thought was to expand that eligibility to require that they at least be residents of the R1 school district for at least a year preceding appointment. So it would be, they have to be a registered elector of the town, and they have to have lived in the R1 school district for at least a year prior to appointment. So that's the first suggestion for both P and Z and Hark. Are there any questions on that piece?
Yes,
Well,
Right.
basically, like, they could have moved to. They lived in the R1 school district, they moved to Telluride, 1 month later, they re-registered to vote here. 1 month later, they apply for Hark and P and Z and they would be eligible.
Right.
Okay.
And as it is right now, they would have to wait a whole year.
Before they
We've
could-
had applicants that were interested, and then a year later, they just never reapply. So it could garner some more interest, and we thought limiting it to the R1 school district would be a better option than just expanding it to all of San Miguel County. So that's why we are proposing R1 for that.
just one question. Have you had applicants from anywhere other than Mountain Village in the R1 school district? Historically?
Placidly.
Yeah, I was gonna say Down Valley.
Thanks.
So that's the first, and then term limits is something that council has wanted to discuss for a while. And in the discussions, we talked about how there are certain boards and commissions that there are more interest. We receive a lot more applicants for like Parks and Rec Commission or CASE than P and Z. So in determining term limits, no, you don't think so. We thought that it shouldn't be something that was super short because learning curve is really steep for HARC and P and Z. Council wants consistency across the board. So during their work session, it was determined that I think everyone agreed to do the term limits to limit to no more than 4 consecutive 2-year terms or 8 consecutive years for all boards and commissions. And this would be proposed at first reading, probably November 28th, and then second reading in December. So it would take effect next year. So there are 3 members currently on the Planning and Zoning Commission that this would impact. And you wouldn't have to give up your term midterm, but it would be if this is adopted that you would serve out your current term and then unfortunately wouldn't be able to apply for another term. You could sit out a term and then reapply, but
So are you done?
I'm done.
Well, so I have some comments, since this is, it's not a question, I guess we should first have questions for Tiffany. Are there questions for Tiffany? And then I have some comments.
So AB Lovick's trying to join P and Z and she can't get on the Zoom link.
Oh, she wants to come on the meeting.
Oh.
Can we fix that problem? Thank you. Kathy.
She needs entry.
Are there, so we don't have, if we don't have questions for Tiffany. well,
Over on the laptop there. I'm sorry, how now?
Okay.
I have 4 screens going, so,
I'll let you do it.
yeah, thanks.
Ron, did you? want
Yeah,
to-
we did receive some comments from HARC members and they should be in front of you for your
Correct.
consideration.
Thank
Okay.
you. So I have, should we just go to comment then? I think we've done with questions. All right, I have a number of comments. I'll follow up this way. So I fully support the goal of more diversity in our government, including on our boards and commissions. That's great. I think that this is not perfectly well crafted when it comes to P and Z specifically, based on our experience here, my experience here. On P and Z, as on HARC, and I think Tiffany said this, and town council recognizes, expertise is kind of important. And it takes, and there's a steep learning curve, and it takes a while to understand the different parts of the land use code, how they work. But also important for us in particular, I think, is institutional memory, so that we don't have arbitrary and capricious decisions that change, that are completely different for one applicant than they were for the last applicant. And, you know, I can't tell you the number of times that people have brought up something that happened in the past and said, well, but you remember when this happened, and it's extremely relevant and important, and there's no way staff can bring all that to our attention. It's just not possible. Staff hasn't been here as long as some of the board members. So I think that those 2 factors, expertise and institutional memory, are particularly important on P and Z. I note that the HARC comments address this issue by trying to focus on what specific qualifications could they ask for in an application. We rarely have any urban planners who want to serve on P and Z.
We don't have that in
Right.
in the P and Z
We don't
qualifications.
have that in the P and Z qualifications because we really don't have any such people. Or not enough of them. We couldn't, if we put in the qualifications, we would never get any qualified people. So it's more a matter of being on the board and learning by serving and learning from the staff and learning from each other. Now, town council currently has total discretion to do exactly what they want to do. If they want to take us off every 8 years, they can. And if they don't want to, they don't have to. I don't see why they would hamstring themselves and not allow themselves that flexibility. You know, if they wanted to take us off after 8 years, fine. They just don't have to renew. They cannot renew anybody. And in fact, town council has, we serve at the pleasure of town council. Town council can remove us if they so choose. And that's a little harder, but they can certainly remove us at the end every time they have to reappoint us. They just appoint somebody else or don't reappoint us. I have a few more comments. So term limits for elected officials make a lot of sense. They make a lot of sense because of the advantages of incumbency in the voter's mind. Incumbent officials have great name recognition, much better than a new person, and they can do things for the voters. And in the run up to the election, even they can, they can show why they should be reelected. We don't have those advantages. We serve at the pleasure of town council, as we just said. Finally, I think that the structure of P and Z with our alternates and then our regular members reflects this need for experience and institutional memory and allows town council more flexibility to shape the board in the way that they think is most appropriate. So alternates often become regular members. And certainly if you said to an alternate, oh, the period that you're an alternate counts towards your term limit, I don't think we would get people wanting to be alternates. I mean, I think that would be a pretty big negative. But, so I think that at least the alternate period shouldn't. So I guess my view is town council already has the power to shape this board in any way they want. And I don't know why they would want to impose a restriction that would deprive them of the flexibility to have some members who have this valuable institutional memory or this valuable expertise, and some new members who they can rotate in whenever they want. Those are my comments.
Yeah, I'll agree. I think that it's going to be really tricky to balance the potential consequences of these term limits and against the intended benefits. I know that mitigating the encumbrance and encouraging participation, reducing career, candidates, and obviously diversifying representation is all good. But to your point, we're going to lose that experience from the thought leaders, the experienced leaders that we've had, and also kind of reduce the accountability that it brings to somebody that is serving, because they might be able to term out and, not really have to see the consequences of some of their decisions. So I think that I couldn't agree with you more as far as you already had, the town council already has that flexibility. And I don't think you should hamstring, like you said. I agree. Especially in this board. P and Z is very experienced leaders.
Yeah, my feelings fall in the same vein that particularly here, but also on Hart, at least the Kathy of P and Z brings us experience and knowledge that nobody else on staff has.
That's right.
Because they haven't been there that long. It's true that council has that power. It's really difficult to wield that power. Having sat in that chair and tried to do it.
To exercise
To
reappointment.
exercise not reappointing
Right.
somebody.
An incumbent, I think I went for case 4 times and never got it because there was always an incumbent and I understand the continuity and how important that is. So
Yeah, and trying to look at
balance that.
what council is hoping to accomplish, which is the infusion of not only of new blood, but of different blood and different thoughts and different experiences, is nothing but laudable. But I don't think this is the right mechanism.
Speak, but
all those people. Yeah, but let's, all right. Mark. Can we get Mark to talk? Thank you.
Oh, I'll be brief. I think you've said it all. I was just going to throw some numbers in here. If there are between Parks and Recs case, open space and P and Z, at least 4 seats that I know of that are empty and have been empty for a while. Some of us don't have full boards. And it's been a struggle to recruit. And then you take down, and maybe Tiffany has the number, it'd be interesting to hear it, at least 8 people who would have been 8 years experience. Now you've got more than a dozen openings, and we can't even get, at least at Hart, somebody to fill our alternate seats. So that, in addition to all that you've said, I just wanted to look at it from that angle too. It's tough in a small town with a small pool or even a shrinking pool, is they can't afford to live here. So thank you.
Charles, Tiffany, can you get Charles on?
Yes, I think I just agree with everybody. I think Hart and P and Z are a little different than the other boards, in that I think the experience, you know, I mean, almost every one of our meetings, Kathy is able to tell us something that no one else would have known about that happened in the past, whether it's staff or anyone. She's the only one that has that knowledge. So I would hate to lose that. And you know, P and Z had several openings in the past that took a while to fill, and I know Hart has a hard time. So I really do worry about us being able to fill the positions if I think 3 of us would be, you know, termed out. And I believe I would term out with my next, if, you know, if I was elected again, so that would be 4. So I think it would just be hard to fill our seats. That's it.
Did you want to say something?
Sure. I agree. I think, but first, I think Hart and P and Z are very similar in how we function. And so we need the same, it's not like one of us is different than the other. So, and I think the long-term knowledge that some of us bring can be really helpful. Because we've had probably more turnover in the planning department than maybe in the Hart department. I was trying to make a list of who been. But the staff has turned over really rapidly in this town in the time I've lived here. And it's amazing what we don't know. And it's amazing when we had paper records, we could find it all out. And now that everything's online, there's missing stuff that's never been found again. So that scares me. People feel like I've been on here too long. That's fine. I don't have to be reappointed. But I think it's really important. I've also had feedback that on the case board, it's important to have a chairperson with a sense of history. And so, and a good chairperson. So I think that would be great, you know, maybe for all the boards, not just to separate P and Z. I'm thinking about the Ecology Commission that I'm serving on now, and I've been on it too long as well, ever since it got reinvented in 2000. And I don't want to be chair. We have vacancies, and the person that just became the chair, she'll learn, but she doesn't know how to run a meeting. You know, I mean, the entire board, there's not anyone other than myself who knows how to run a meeting. Now, those meetings are not super serious. You come in here and we're quasi judicial, and you better know how to run a meeting. And you better not be saying, oh, I don't like Robert's Rules of Order, why do we have to do it? So I think town council needs to go back to the beginning and rethink this. I know there've been people in the past that seemed disruptive in some of the different boards, not just Park or P and Z, but other boards. And council has to be brave. They can take them off in the middle of a term. I think they could recall them. Just, you know, be brave and get rid of them if they've been dysfunctional or disruptive. Make it a big deal and take them away. But I think it's important to allow some people, they have enough people on the boards that you can always have a chairperson and a vice chairperson who can really run a meeting, and that you have a sense of history, because the town staff in certain departments has had a lot of turnover.
Great. I think that is a good point, especially the quasi judicial aspect of it. I mean, it is, we want to run a meeting, which at the end of it, whether the applicants are happy with the outcome or not. And of course, town council can always review what we make a different decision. We serve, we serve under them. But we've done a clean job. We've done- And that's not a foregone conclusion.
That's right.
We also have Amy Levitt on that would like to provide comment.
Are we at public comment yet, or have other people want to say anything? Peter? No? We have Amy and we have Dan. Dan, you can go first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to provide a couple of things. One small correction to Tiffany's presentation. It was not unanimous among town council. I was the one dissenting voice on that. But of course, I am not here to represent my own voice. I'm here to represent the majority of council. The other thing that I just don't think was quite touched on that was emphasized by council during the first work session on this. There was a sense that there wouldn't even be applications from the general public due to some of the incumbency bias from council that you also touched on a little bit, that the preference is almost always given to the incumbent and that applicants weren't even implying because they felt that it was a foregone conclusion that they would win. And so that was one of the other factors that led to this discussion that I just wanted to throw in there for your consideration, since it was one of the heavy points raised in the work session on this by council that I hadn't heard it get raised. But I have my own thoughts and feelings on this, but again, I'm here to represent the
I
majority.
have a question for you. As a liaison to some of these other committees, do you guys give input to the rest of the council when it comes to new election or, appointments? Maybe that this person that's coming, that's an incumbent, has not been serving the needs of the committee as much as possibly a new applicant? Like, how much do you intervene?
Yeah, well, there's certainly have been discussions leading into a vote, and almost always it is asked by the mayor pro tem as of late to the liaison, their experience with them, and ask for general comments on that. Of course, as we're all aware, it can be awkward to badmouth somebody in a small town in a public forum. So I think there is an element of that as well, but
Yeah, it's not bad math. It's more of a justification, right?
Yeah.
That possibly the new applicant brings a lot more to the appointment. Just
and
curious.
certainly, and thankfully I have not, nor do I know of any time in my history on council of needing to badmouth quote unquote anybody. We're thankful for the high quality of our commission members, but just thinking hypothetically, I suppose.
Thank you.
Thank you, Misha.
Did Amy want to say something?
Yes. Amy.
Oh, Amy Levitt.
She's unmuted.
Hello,
Okay. Amy?
hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I can't see you guys, so, anyways, I agree with most of what you've said, and having been involved with PNC and HARC over the years, I think, one of the other things that you might want to consider in recommending against term limits is that individual board members bring different expertise and interest, to the mix. And, I think that, that shouldn't, that's something that's important to consider too. Very rarely is a board member an expert in everything that the board considers. Also, I do think that the institutional knowledge is really, really important. I would hate to see boards be hamstrung by not knowing what has come before them, having members who serve for longer periods of time and build up an understanding of what their mission is. So anyways, I do think that council, as you've mentioned, has the ability to remove a board member if they're not performing, in a way that benefits the board. So anyways, I hope you recommend against term limits. Thank you.
Do we have any other public comment, Tiffany?
Seeing none.
Okay. All right, well, I think we've had some discussion. I'm going to make a motion. Let's see. Good stuff. I move to recommend to town council that we not approval of the non-approval non-approval of the amendment to the Land Use Code, Article 9, Division 1, Planning and Zoning Commission, and Division 2, Historic and Architectural Review Commission, for the purposes of amending commission eligibility requirements and imposing term limits, with the LUC amendment language attached to the staff memorandum dated October 18th, 2023. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held October 26th,
Yeah,
2023, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Question?
I have a question. It seems like some of the HART members were into redefining the qualifications for HART. And I would think we might want to have an amendment on the motion that we would support the HARTs, what they want to redefine about how you qualify. HART has, the special qualifications to serve. But that's a little bit of a separate issue, but it's all on the same proposal, so I'm not sure how to go forward with that.
Can I suggest that we leave that to Hark? I mean, county council will listen to them.
They had a work session with that, though. They did not take action. We are being asked to vote, correct?
Well, and I wanted to ask Ally procedurally. We've got a motion and a second on the floor, so we
need to either vote, amend the motion, or
well, if we don't move to recommend it, we're not recommending it. It dies of its own death.
is that procedurally correct? Or would it be better for us to vote to make a motion that expresses?
Well, so clarify what you mean there, Todd. You mean it doesn't go up to town council? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
No, so you don't have to affirmatively recommend this in order for it to still move forward to town council. So it will go forward to town council either way. It just goes forward without your recommendation. So you just have to take action to either recommend or not recommend. But once that action has taken, that box is checked and it goes on.
So we should act on this motion one way.
Okay, well, then I have a question for Ally. If we want to support Parks concerns about redefining their qualifications, how would we do that?
So you would need, so right now, the motion on the table is to not recommend all of the changes. So you would need to amend the motion to instead not recommend certain portions and to recommend other portions. So
In
you
the-
might want to abandon this motion and move forward with a different one at this point.
All right, I withdraw my motion.
I second that or whatever. Yeah, yeah.
All right, let's try this again. I move to recommend to town council that they not approve the amendment to the Land Use Code Article 9, Division 1, Planning and Zoning Commission, and Division 2, Historic and Architectural Review Commission, for the purposes of amending commission eligibility requirements and imposing term limits with the LUC amendment language attached to the staff memorandum dated October 15th, and with the findings of the staff memorandum dated October 18th, 2020, with the exception, except that they adopt the recommendations of Park with respect to the qualifications needed for serving on that commission. Todd.
And that the qualification for P and Z at 9103A, which is adding in the school district,
Language, yeah.
is recommended. So
You've lived in the area, you've lived in town like 10 minutes.
We actually didn't discuss this. Are we okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Cool with the red line.
And with the exception that the qualification that you have to have lived for 1 year in town be amended as provided in the recommended deadline. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held on October 26, 2023. Reading, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code.
Todd seconds.
All right, any further discussion? No, all in favor? Thank you, Ron.
Charles?
Unanimous.
Oh, Charles also voted. No. It's unanimous. Great. Do we need a break or are we moving on to the next thing? We're good to move on? Okay. All right. We have a public hearing item. Project title Canyonland Powerhouse Affordable Housing PUD Conceptual Plan. Summary, consideration of a conceptual PUD plat at Lot 3, Block 1 of the Canyonland subdivision. And at 650, 652, and 654 West Colorado Avenue, requesting 4 PUD variations pursuant to Land Use Code Article 6, Division 4, including the following variations. 1, an increase in site coverage allowed from 40% to a maximum of 60%. 2, an increase in the building height allowed from 35 feet to a maximum of 40 feet. 3, a reduction in the number of required parking spaces. 4, a reduction of the minimum lot size from 2,500 square feet to 1,500. Legal description, Lot 3, Block 1, Canyonland subdivision, and lots 31, 32, and 33, Backman Village subdivision. Address 650, 652, and 654 West Colorado Avenue. Unassigned address for Lot 3, Block 1, Canyonland subdivision. Then district accommodations. 2, owner Block 23 Housing Corporation and Town of Telluride. Applicant Norris Design and staff member Ron. Ron,
Hey, Lenny,
Charles.
Charles,
I'm assuming I need to recuse myself. I'm a property owner across the street.
Ally,
Was he notified? Do you know?
I.
Did you receive
don't-
notice,
Yes.
Charles?
Okay,
I did
then-
receive notice in the mail and I had sent out an email saying that I was assuming that should recuse myself, so. But so,
Okay, yes, if you did receive that notice, then please do recuse yourself.
okay, sorry. Sorry, I didn't do that before
thank you, Charles.
okay, thanks.
I don't recall receiving that notification. But I own a condo that's right there. Right next to Lot 3.
So are you happily recused or unhappily?
Where is it?
He's adjacent.
Directly.
Yeah.
You are also refused. 5.
Isn't it 75 feet?
But it's from the property line too, so if it's part of.
It's,
All right, so do we have a quorum to consider this?
Yeah.
Yes.
We have 4, good, okay.
4 of us.
I get to
We
vote?
only need 3.
Yeah.
Alternate step?
All right, go
Yeah,
ahead,
and
Ron.
just to point out, the applicant is also aware that they were, that tonight's meeting would probably have a quorum of 4 members, so. Thank you, Chair and Commission. This is an application for the Canyonlands Tower House Conceptual PUD. It includes 2 separate parcels. One parcel that you're familiar with, the Canyonlands parcel, adjacent to the Clark's Market, formerly used as a commercial parking area in the past. It was acquired by the town of Telluride. The other parcel, which is actually 3 platted lots, includes the Tower House duplex condominium and an adjacent vacant lot. Just to familiarize yourself with this site, again, the Canyonland site is a vacant site, has been used for permit parking or commercial parking in the past. The townhouse, tower house development to the east. Adjoining land uses are primarily accommodations and residential. And of course, the Clark's Market and the high school and middle school to the north. By this slide, I'm trying to kind of summarize what's being proposed here with this PUD. Beginning from at the northern end of the application, the northwest building on Canyonlands, 4-story building of 16,393 square feet, 21 apartments, upper 3 levels, and the lowest level for parking and storage. The second building on the Canyonland site is a 3-story building of 4,366 square feet. 8 apartments and lower level parking. Moving to the second parcel, going back to the Canyonlands, there's 24 on-site parking spaces. There are 29 actual apartment units, so there's a deficiency of 5 parking spaces. Tower House condominiums that are proposed, 3-story buildings, 2 3-story buildings of 3,500 square feet, 4 condominiums in each of the buildings. The buildings are proposed, or the 8 units that are proposed for these 2 buildings are affordable housing units. And then finally, 3 3-story attached townhomes of 3,000 square feet each. They are located on individual lots, or will be located on individual lots if platted as proposed. Diving a little deeper, Canyonland site, 17,340 square feet lot. And that's assuming a portion of the right-of-way for Colorado Avenue will be vacated, and the lot will extend into the area that's currently right-of-way. 29 rental apartment units are proposed with this development. The variations that are requested as a part of the PUD are to increase the maximum building height from 35 feet on the northwest building up to 40 feet. And again, on-site parking would be reduced by 5 spaces. 29 spaces would be required by the land use code. The PUD would allow for the reduction of 5 spaces. Pointing out that 6 on-street parking spaces are proposed as a part of this PUD development along Colorado Avenue. We typically don't consider on-street parking for the parking ratio, but that is something to consider with this application. 2 of those spaces will be ADA compliant. The Tower House condominiums, located on a lot proposed 4,614 square feet, again, with the assumption that the right-of-way vacation would occur, increasing the size of that lot. 8 deed-restricted affordable condominium units are proposed. The variations with the PUD, the building height would expand or extend greater than the 35-foot maximum up to 40 feet. Site coverage would exceed the maximum of 40% and increase to up to 60%. And then finally, the 3 townhome lots. These are market rate or free market townhomes on lots that would be typically considered substandard, ranging from 1,800 square feet to 1,500 square feet. And that is one of the variations that's requested as a part of the PUD. Typically, a 2,500 square feet would be the minimum size lot that would be allowed. The other variation would be to allow for the height to extend to 40 feet and the site coverage, again, to extend up to 60% for at least 2 of these lots. Something that's a little bit atypical, I guess, with this application is that it is including a portion of the Colorado Avenue right-of-way for a request to vacate and to expand the size of the parcels for the future development. Planning and Zoning Commission will consider this again when it comes before you as a preliminary plat or subdivision. The right-of-way vacation would be your review and recommendation to the town council, but ultimately town council would have to adopt an ordinance to vacate the right-of-way. The area that is proposed for the vacation includes 3,773 square feet on both the frontages of both parcels. Staff has included in the memo some of our concerns. There is opportunity, again, when the preliminary plat and the plan come before you for your consideration, that some of these alignments be refined and that that it be more of a practical alignment if the right-of-way vacation is vacate, or if the vacation does occur, that it is more of a practical alignment for future maintenance and the upkeep of the right-of-way. As a part of the PUD variations to the building height, site coverage, lot size, right-of-way vacation, basis for these reductions or these variations to allow more efficient and economical use of the town land and resources, to maximize the number of affordable housing units provided on prime in-town property, to increase the usable land area to maximize the number of affordable housing units on the site, to provide more land area for additional affordable housing units to be built on the site, and with the consideration of the property's proximity to mass transit routes and the available pedestrian access from the site to the major activity centers in the town. These were the basis that was provided by the applicant in the application. Timeline on this application, ARC actually reviewed this at a work session at its meeting last week, and the applicant will present some of the findings that ARC provided, or some of the changes that they may anticipate as a part of this work session. Tonight is the review of the conceptual PUD. If you grant the conceptual PUD, then it would move forward or to allow the applicant to submit a preliminary plan and preliminary subdivision for your consideration. The anticipated dates for review include HARC preliminary review of the site plan, December 13. And then December 14, P&Z would review the preliminary plat or PUD and subdivision and recommend to town council the right-of-way vacation. And then finally, town council would consider at a future meeting the right-of-way vacation as proposed in this application. And final reviews and recordation would then occur to implement to reflect the approvals that were granted by town council and P&Z. And with that, that concludes the presentation. I know the applicant has a detailed presentation, but I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
Anybody have any questions for Ron?
The memo mentioned Public Works hasn't had a chance to comment, that there's things to be resolved or,
Yeah,
and
there are details as far as the water lines, sewer lines, the depth. There are issues that need to be addressed with the preliminary plan when it is submitted. And if that is one of our recommendations in the staff memos, that you consider that as a part of the as it does go forward for your review.
I'm sorry, you didn't-
I'd just add that it seems like it's as unusual in that regard, as you noted, that at that time, the applicants are including information that describes how these frontages interact with the rest of the sidewalks and the right of way east and west, and just how that's going to work or be impacted. as
Yeah,
a part of this.
we would recommend a more practical alignment of the right of way. It does kind of meander around these parcels and does create some challenges for staff as far as snow removals and maintenance and lots of things.
So has Public Works commented on this?
Yes,
And what is their view?
that's included in the staff memo that I think,
Didn't think it was a full-blown review so much as some things were flagged and identified to look into.
Yeah, I thought
In
it
the
was
near
more
future.
preliminary.
Yes.
and
There was
again,
not a memo.
this is
included.
conceptual and that's the basis for the recommendation is that they consider these issues when it does come before you as preliminary plan.
Also, I have a question. What does affordable mean in this context? Is these deed restricted?
Yes, they're deed
Okay.
restricted.
So everywhere it says affordable, we can read deed restricted. Yeah.
The combination of free market is interesting, I think also. Not sure if I have a question there, but I have curiosity as they present
Yeah, and I think,
related to
I
that.
think the applicant will clarify that that is part of the consideration of making this financially feasible.
That makes sense. I just have some concerns regarding the water drainage in that whole area. I know there's a swale crossing going across at the angle there, but in general, a lot of that drainage around the foundation of the neighbors doesn't really drain. It ponds a lot. It suggests that it's shallow groundwater. I don't know if we know the depth of it, if it was mentioned, but just in general, I know that there has to be clear working areas and a lot of that part's for FEMA compliance, but it just seems like the flood zone that comes through from Cornet Creek there, that whole corner. I'm sure they'll comment, but it just seems to be, needs to be addressed.
All right, why don't we hear from the applicant? See, who's going to present? Are they?
These guys.
Okay, good. Which one? Good. Can you make her unmute?
Oh, great. Thank you. My name is Kate Berg. I am with Norris Design. Thank you for having us this evening. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Share our presentation with you. All right. Can everybody see that all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, good evening. We are excited to be sharing the Canyonlands and Tower House affordable housing community with you tonight. Norris Design, we are landscape architects, planners, and placemakers, and we're partnered with Servitas as the developer, Designs of Tomorrow Architecture, and Kimley Horn as the civil engineer. We are developing this project through an innovative public-private partnership to deliver much needed housing to downtown Telluride. The town and Block 23 Housing Corporation will be conveying the property to Servitas to develop the site for housing. Development of Canyonlands and Tower House was a key part of the town council's 2023 goals and objectives. And we're moving this initiative forward, creating 40 total residential units within the downtown core with 29 affordable rental units on the Canyonlands site and 8 affordable for sale condos on the Tower House site. Overall, there will be a total of 37 affordable units and 3 market rate townhomes, which are provided to help subsidize the overall project. These are some of our overall goals for the project. Increasing the supply of affordable housing for the local workforce, providing a nice diverse mix of for rent and for sale housing types, really trying to maximize the efficient use of land in this in-town location, and strike the right balance between providing as many affordable housing units as possible, while also designing a really high quality livable development that integrates really nicely into the downtown and is consistent with the town character. A couple other key goals that have driven our design are an effort to really create and preserve strong pedestrian connections, and to try to reinforce and kind of restore the traditional streetscape along this section of Colorado Avenue. The team held 2 community meetings to discuss this affordable housing neighborhood this past summer, one on June 29th and one on August 3rd. As Ron mentioned, we also just had a work session with HARC on October 18th and got their feedback and direction, which we're already incorporating into a new architectural design that we're really excited about and looking forward to moving forward with that and showing you more of those architectural details with our preliminary PUD application. We are not planning to focus too much on architecture tonight because it's going to be changing so significantly, but wanted to just note that we were really encouraged to hear that HARC generally had very positive feedback for us on the overall proposed site plan and the building footprints. So I'll just kind of jump into the key highlights here that we'd like to convey. As far as the property location, both sites are located along the south side of Colorado, towards the west end of town. And as you know, this is a really great central in-town location, very walkable, convenient access to all downtown services, to all the different public transportation stops that you see identified here on this graphic. You can see walkability circles show 1/4 mile and 1/2 mile walking distances from the site. The property is, both sites are located within the Accommodations 2 zone district, which allows residential housing with relatively higher densities. We will be following the zone district standards with a few requests to increase dimensional limitations through the proposed PUD. And those are intended to allow more efficient use of land, help us maximize affordable housing, and accomplish some other key design goals that we're going to talk about. So in terms of the context, when we look at the context of the town of Telluride, we want to have similar scale buildings. You can see these footprints here, similar scale buildings. We would like to replicate the historic grid and offer some diversity in the setback along Colorado Avenue, while also maintaining landscape space along the streetscape. So we are proposing to vacate a portion of the right-of-way along Colorado Avenue. And what this graphic is intended to show is how the proposed setback to the proposed buildings will align with and be in some cases set further back than many of the surrounding buildings. So on this graphic, the blue lines are the sidewalk on the south and the edge of pavement on the north. And the red dashed line represents a 20-foot offset from the back of curb. So we can see where buildings overlap this 20-foot mark quite a bit. And then other areas that are anomalies, like Clark's and the duplex that's located between the 2 housing sites, where we have a development pattern that's set back more in a more kind of suburban pattern. So this design intends to restore a more consistent historic streetscape along Colorado Avenue and improve the sidewalk connectivity within this area, which as shown here at the star, currently the sidewalk dead ends at right at this attached sidewalk along the on-street parking. A couple other key things just to mention here. By vacating some of the right-of-way and pushing the buildings up closer to the street, that provides an opportunity to preserve view corridors for the neighbors to the west. There's a number of reasons that we're requesting to vacate the right of way, to increase the buildable area, to provide better constructability and circulation with better connections to the ground and to the sidewalks, allowing us, if we're able to push the buildings closer to the road, closer to Colorado, we'll be able to push them further up the hill, considering some of those site constraints that were mentioned related to the floodplain and groundwater and just the general topography of this site, especially Canyonlands that slopes down so significantly from the road. And so a couple key points here. We have received information from Public Works outlining the needs and specifications for the Colorado Avenue right-of-way, and we will be working with Public Works to ensure that the right-of-way continues to meet the town's functional requirements. We're also really working to ensure that we can save as many of the existing large cottonwoods and aspens as possible within this portion of the right-of-way. And one of the key things we just wanted to emphasize here, I think one of the commissioners specifically asked us to touch on this. So what this slide is intended to show is, one of our main goals, as I mentioned, is to improve pedestrian connectivity in this area. And so in terms of the pedestrian connections that we're proposing, A here in the purple shows continuous public sidewalks along both Colorado and Tomboy. And as we move forward with the design, we are going to be working to kind of even out those odd, jagged, areas and make it a smoother, more continuous sidewalk across the sites. Also, you can see in the pink here, B identifies internal pedestrian connections that are proposed through the site, connecting from the parking areas to the residential entrances, and also providing pedestrian connections from the homes out to both Colorado and Tomboy. And lastly, we just wanted to mention that as you can see here in green, C shows that there will be some north-south pedestrian connection provided between the buildings on the Tower House site to provide a connection to the north straight to Colorado. Given just the site topography and alignment here, that's going to be not necessarily an ADA compliant connection like these others will be, but at least provide a walking path to really ensure that we're strengthening that north-south connection. So I think Ron did a really nice job setting the context of where this is and what's currently out there. So I won't really belabor this very much. Canyonlands, as you know, is a vacant lot that's approximately 14,700 square feet. It does, one thing just to note is that it does slope down significantly from Colorado Avenue, and the rear portions of the site are substantially lower in grade than Colorado Avenue. And then Tower House, as you know, does contain an existing duplex that was built in 1983, and that we are proposing to demolish that to make room for the proposed development. So just a couple things. This is the overall site plan where you can see both the Canyonlands and the Tower House development sites. A couple things just to kind of note as far as key features. We are proposing to break the program into 5 separate buildings to break up the overall mass and scale. Really trying to create a nice streetscape along Colorado Avenue with front porches lining the street and provide a really nice sizable landscape buffer along Colorado Avenue. Like this landscape buffer as shown is approximately 20 feet. And then, as we mentioned, just really working to try to improve the sidewalk connectivity and the character of the streetscape in this area, making it just kind of a more continuation of the more historic streetscape pattern on Colorado. And just wanted to get into a little bit more detail on each site. This is the Canyonlands site. Access, as we're currently proposing it, access will remain generally in the existing location with parking in the rear. And as we mentioned, front porches along Colorado Avenue. There are 2 buildings proposed. The building on the west will contain 21 units with a mix of studios and 2-bedroom apartments. The building on the east will provide an additional 8 units with a mix of studios, 1-bed and 2-bedroom apartments. And by separating the buildings, we're trying to reinforce the traditional streetscape by visually minimizing the appearance of the overall mass and scale. Both buildings do have tuck under parking in this location here behind the northern building, and then over on the west side here on the eastern building. As far as the proposed PUD, we are meeting the maximum site coverage requirement on the Canyonlands site. We will be requesting on Canyonlands the ability to exceed 35 feet building height just in certain areas. And we are currently redesigning the buildings based on Hark's input. So we will be prepared moving forward to show plans illustrating just the specific areas that would exceed 35 feet building height during the preliminary PUD. As Ron mentioned, we are requesting a reduction of 2 parking spaces on the Canyonlands site. That does include providing 27 parking spaces for the 29 apartments with some additional on-street parking proposed. So looking to provide some of these spaces, 3 of the 27 on-street. And those are new on-street parking spaces that we will be installing. We're not proposing to take over any existing on-street parking spaces. And then moving over to the east to the Tower House site, what we're looking to do here is to provide 8 affordable for sale condos, again, with nice front porches and landscaping, activating the street edge. Within these 2 buildings, there will be a mix of 1- and 2-bedroom units. And then to the south, we are proposing 3 market rate for sale townhomes. Each one of these will be 3-bedroom units, which each have a 1-car garage accessed from the rear. We are requesting additional site coverage on the Tower House site up to a maximum of 60% through the PUD. And just wanted to note that we're just asking for that on Tower House, but overall across both properties, we will be complying with the site coverage maximum allowed by the code. And so on the Tower House site plan, the parking for the affordable units is proposed to be accessed from Tomboy at the rear. The internal pedestrian way, so there's parking spaces along the rear here with a pedestrian connection, a 5-foot sidewalk along the edge of Tomboy, as well as internal pedestrian connections within the site itself to access the residential units. And over here on the right, you can see just a character image. This interior pedestrian connection is it's intended to kind of have this urban character that you can see exists at the rear of the Stronghouse Brew Pub. Let's see here. So yeah, sorry, I should have advanced this slide a little earlier just to reiterate, site coverage a little bit higher on townhouse, but complying for the overall PUD. Again, we will be asking for some areas to exceed the 35 feet building height. Redesigning right now based on HARC input, and at preliminary PUD, we'll be able to show specifically which areas will exceed the building height. And then lastly, in terms of PUD standards that are being proposed, the proposal includes reduced lot sizes for the market rate townhomes on the rear of the site. The code requires a minimum 2,500 square foot lot size, but does allow lot sizes to be reduced to as low as 1,500 square feet through a PUD. And so we're proposing reduced lot sizes just for these market rate townhomes. The proposed sizes range from approximately 1,500 to 1,800 square feet. One thing we just wanted to explain is that that's really not going to materially affect any aspect of the physical development of the site. And it's just being proposed because it's going to help with the project financing. And I am not the expert on that, but Garrett Sharton from Servitas can answer any questions that you have about that much better than I can. So in conclusion, that is our presentation for you tonight. We respectfully request that you approve this conceptual PUD, and we welcome your input and your guidance to help us as we prepare our preliminary PUD application. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Our team is online and we are able to answer any questions that you might have.
Kathy.
Could you back up to the slide right before this question slide? Can you show me for these, there's 11 units between the 3 free markets and the 8 affordables. Where are the 11 parking spaces and how do you get into the garage of the 3 free markets?
Yeah. So what's proposed is a 1-car garage for each of these 3 townhomes, and then a tandem parking space behind each garage. So essentially there's going to be 2 parking spaces for each of these townhomes, because you really can't have anyone else parking tandem behind your garage, but your own unit. And then there will be additional spaces along the rear that are dedicated for the affordable housing units with the pedestrian connection around to the front of the property, as well as 3 on-street parking spaces on Colorado Avenue that would be dedicated to these condo unit owners. So we're trying to hit with the on-street, the 3 on-street spaces included. We're hitting a 1-to-1 ratio for the affordable condos. And then we are providing 2 spaces for each market rate unit, really just because that's the only way to make it work with the garage tandem situation.
Then how many on-street parking spaces are there in total for the 2 projects?
6.
There's how many?
6 total.
Yeah, but weren't they counting 5 of them? Aren't you double counting?
Nope, 6
Two for the
total,
other.
3 for Canyonlands, 3 for Tower House.
Okay. All right.
But they had 27 and they need 29.
Is there a total of 38 parking spaces provided?
41.
41.
But if
All right.
you subtract out the tandem spaces that are behind the garage, then you get down to 38.
Okay. You were going to talk about what you learned from HARC.
Yes, and I think I would like to allow Garrett or John from our team to relay that summary, because I was not in attendance at the HARC work session, so I will not do as good of a job.
Yes, so it's a little hard to show you without illustrations, but essentially what we've done is we've taken the mainly on Canyonlands Northwest was kind of the main project sticking point. So what we did is we actually took the massing of that building and created kind of more tiered, a more tiered scale. So we have 1-story elements with porch roofs. We have 2-story elements, and then we have the 3-story kind of front facade elements. And so we've really tried to break down the overall mass and scale of the building by creating these kind of steps. You can really see it in the floor plan. This floor plan is really close to where we are going to be. But you can see vertically, we kind of step the building back about 16 feet between the portion that sticks out the furthest to the portion that comes back the furthest. And then throughout that in elevation, we also step with, like I say, 1, 2, and 3-story elements. We've also rotated some of the roof elements as well to kind of orient those more towards the street. And then we've used smaller roof elements to kind of also help break down that scale and make them feel very much like townhomes. And so instead of it feeling like a large development, it really feels like 4 townhomes.
Thank you. That sounds like things you're undertaking. I'm curious to hear the commentary on what we have in front of us, what that included. It sounds like you've made some adjustments as you've described, but I'm curious what Hark's comments were still.
I mean, that was the main thing, was just to break down the overall scale and to create those stepping elements. That was really their feedback. Because we're building what was a little bit more massive. And so it was really coming back to cutting and breaking those up. Overall, the floor plates are pretty similar to what you're seeing here for between the new and the old. And so on that aspect, we've really just added a little bit more mass on the northeast corner of the northwest building. So,
Okay, I have a question. I have a question if you're done. Are you done, Peter?
Yeah.
So where are you guys located?
we're in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Uh-huh. And have you actually been to this site like early, let's say around 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning? Because here's my concern, and I hope you've thought about how to address it. How would you address the following concern? You're taking up a lot of the street right at a point next to the supermarket and across the street from the high school. And you're asking 25 at least cars to turn into this space. So they're going to be backed up in what's now one lane, and because you've created this bump out, they can't squeeze over to the side anymore. And people, it's just going to be a traffic zoo right in that spot.
It already is.
Well, yes, it already is. So how can you, how maybe you could get the cars into the lot some other way, or have a garage or something?
So we're not actually changing the street geometry. It's going to stay the same. So that bump out is already existing. What we're doing with that is we're continuing the sidewalk from that bump out across to create more pedestrian access. When it comes to the cars, our goal is to create a more walkable site, so you can have access through our site going out the south and out the north. And we're really hoping that actually gets people walking instead of driving as much. And, you know, we can do some studies and see how the traffic stacks up, but this is kind of the typical traditional entrance to this site. And I feel like, you know.
Yes, but you didn't have 25 cars going in and out every day before they built the building. So it's obviously.
Yeah, we'll make a note of the concern, and just a couple things to just respond to that item is that we are having a traffic analysis done. It's a submittal requirement for the next stage, the preliminary PUD. So we are currently working on analyzing the traffic, and any recommendations that come out of that traffic analysis will be incorporated into the design. And as we discussed already, we are also working with Public Works, and we're going to be making some modifications to make sure that what is proposed is going to work as far as, you know, maintaining town functionality of the right of way. So this is going to be smoothed out more. This is not, you know, the final design. And I apologize if we're conveying it as if it is. I should have said that.
Thanks, Kathy.
Just to reinforce what Eleni said, there's a really critical time in the morning around 8 to 8:15 when school's starting. And it's 1,000 kids at this school plus the teachers. It's not inconsequential. And then there's another critical time around 3 when most of the classes get out. And there's a huge amount of pedestrian traffic. All the kids want to go to Clark's and get food. And a lot of them are walking to school and crossing right in this neighborhood. So it's
Okay.
that's the times to look at. Other times of the day, it's not as bad. Then my other question might be might be some of town staff has to answer. Why did you not include the duplex between the two lots in this redevelopment plan? Why is that being held back?
Separate ownership.
Separate owners?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'd have to acquire it.
Okay, okay, okay. All right.
I got one more
I mean,
general
we would
question.
love to, but I don't think they want to give us their property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Sandy.
Curiosity, you described, I think, well, the unit count and towards the parking deficiency. What is the rough bedroom count here between both of these or all that's proposed?
Oh,
And I suppose your redesigning and unit count itself may be somewhat in flux, but give us a sense of that, how it compares to parking, which you've clarified.
John, can you provide the current bedroom count based on the redesigns? Or do we want to take a minute to find that and give it to you in a few minutes?
We're actually looking at that tomorrow, and we were going to look at reworking a few of the units. But just give me one moment and I'll get you that number of current bedroom count.
And
Okay.
I think it's fine with what's currently in front of us as well, just to have some, that is helpful for us to anticipate parking and
Okay.
how many potential cars are going to be elsewhere and with folks living here. It's more the
Okay.
curiosity.
Okay. We will get that information.
And I took to heart your comment. I've looked at the survey. It looks like the ability to exist, have the front of the building sit on high at the sidewalk or out in this current right of way allows the height measurement, the benefit of 3 or 4 or maybe more feet, depending, which I'm sure is not lost to you guys and quite helpful with what you have going on.
Yeah.
Sorry, Peter, can you say that again?
Just they have described that
I couldn't hear.
the Canyonlands portion of this at any rate, and I can't really speak to the other, has its highest grade is really at its property line.
Mhm.
And that is to the north towards the sidewalk, and the buildings are shown on that high ground and beyond it. And that allows you to have a measured height starting higher. And
So the whole thing is
than
high.
it would be if it existed on property setback from,
Right.
Zigzagging and such. Anyway, that is clear here that I don't know if Harks had mass and scale concerns at all about the heights that were described, but that would be another question related to that. Overall
Yeah.
height. It does seem like your proposal here that was in front of Hark did include a rather substantial singular building. And I'm hearing you describing breaking it down or trying to create more stepping and smaller scaled elements, which doesn't surprise me. I would
Yeah.
encourage you to include streetscape like views of what this looks like. This is unusual to be building out in right of way for sure, but this is public benefit, we know, and that it feels as you've described it, that it's tucked in and not jammed or too abrupt. I was on a Hark 10 years ago or whatever it was when the high school was redone. Have sort of bad memories of that as an urban piece. didn't, landscaping's gonna solve it. And you're like, yeah, okay. So I'm hopeful it sounds like you guys are well underway and I didn't attend your HARC meeting, but it sounds like you got good constructive comment from them on that.
Yeah, and we will have those streetscape views as we move forward. Garrett, did you want to say something?
My name Garrett Sharton with Servitas, the developer on the project. Appreciate the parking and traffic concerns. As Kate mentioned, we have commissioned a traffic study, and part of the lease up strategies that we're exploring is to potentially limit some of the units to be no car units. Also, some other rural resort communities in Colorado will actually increase the priority if there's a wait list that you actually, get a higher status in the lottery or in the prioritization of getting access to a unit if you agree to not bring a car. So there's some other strategies that we are going to investigate on the operational side, not just the development and design side.
Are there other questions for the applicant? Kathy?
Will the new parking you're creating along Colorado Avenue be permitted in order to keep other people out of it?
Garrett, do you want to talk about that?
My short answer is that it can be. If that's the commission's desire, we can do that. I'd want a chance to study that and confer with town staff, but we can do that.
So that seems kind of crucial, Kathy's question, if it's to be counted wherever it is, town right away or wherever, if it's indeed for use with some exclusivity for the property.
And right now, we don't allow overnight parking on Colorado Avenue for snow plowing. And since these people might live there and want to sleep at night, they might have night jobs, I don't know. It seems like you're gonna have to work that out with Public Works as permitted and that cars can overnight there, 365 days a year.
Yeah.
Understood.
We
Thank
plan
you.
to work with the town and structure it in a way that works.
Yeah, and we think there might be precedent at Mendota already for that model. So we understand, we hear you. Thank you.
So
At some point, I have one other request. We have a Public Works staff person here now, and I would like to hear her comments, since she bothered to come, on the proposal.
Hi, I'm Karen Williamo. I'm Karen Guglielmone. I work for Public Works. And I think that, I imagine that our comments were included in the memo. And so, but I was nodding my head saying that there is precedent over at Mendota for use of the right of way for dedicated parking, not for Mendota residents. I think it's for some of the buildings behind Mendota.
on Colorado.
On Colorado Avenue, and they're signed as permitted for very specific units.
Okay.
I don't think I've seen a Public Works memo in the application.
We just had comments from secondhand comments from Ron, but
Yeah.
we know that there's a little bit of redesign needs there. That's what
Yeah,
we're
we're
curious about.
working with the applicants on a variety of challenges, and our comments were very similar to your comments about traffic and concerns about, how trash trucks get in and out of the area so that it's safe and there's good traffic flow. And we have a variety of, which probably in the comments, there's a variety of utilities that go through the Canyonland site that we're still working on how we're still doing our investigations on what alternatives might be available in that area. for moving that infrastructure and so, unfortunately, we haven't met this week, so I can't share any new insights with anyone. We plan on meeting next week.
Thank you, Karen. Have any other questions for the applicant or staff, or should we go to discussion?
Curious if they got a bedroom count. That was a question that was out there,
Oh, that's right.
or an estimate.
Go ahead, John.
Or no?
Sorry, I got muted there. Yeah, we got on Canyonlands site, the northwest is 33 and the east building is 10.
All of those are deed restricted housing?
Well, that's.
Yes.
That's correct.
And, oh, -3? Is that -3 or is that just,
That includes the.
it includes the 3 free markets? Is that correct?
Those are just the north or the northwest building on Canyonlands site and the east.
Oh, okay.
Put it all together for us. So we got 43 on the northwest property, correct?
43 on Canyonlands total with northwest and east, John?
55 total.
Oh,
55, thank
55
you.
total bedrooms.
All right, I realize that this is in flux to some degree, but that's a good starting point.
Yeah, that's across the whole site.
Is that Canyonlands and Tower House or just Canyonlands?
That's the entire site.
Both properties.
Correct.
Okay. And so for Canyonlands, it's 43?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. So do you want to have any discussion or are we discussed, have we said everything you want to say?
I still don't, I mean, I know this is still conceptual, but, and maybe now that you're here, Karen, that I have had a lot of people in Mendota, especially on the first floor, mention that there's been flooding, that it does actually get into their units. And so it does sound like there's serious drainage issues possibly having at that corner. And I just don't know when that is going to be addressed or brought up or talked about.
So we actually, in the townhomes, we addressed that by creating a loft bedroom up in the actual roof structure itself and eliminated any living space on the ground floor. We also did the same thing on both buildings on Canyonlands sites. They have storage and some mechanical equipment for drainage specifically that we're going to include on the first floor in the crawl space areas. So those are how we're addressing the water issues, is we're just keeping it all starting kind of on that second floor. It's like, and then keeping the first floor to use for some of that water storage. So a lot of the roof drainage will end up in those spaces and tanks, and then we'll kind of drain that. We're working with our civil engineer on a strategy to take care of the site drainage.
Thank you.
Aaron, did you want to say anything? about that?
Were you referring to South Tomboy as it makes the dog leg?
Yeah.
Yes, we're very aware of the street drainage problems. We're working with the civil engineer to make sure that these developments don't make that worse. But we also are, we have commissioned at Public Works a survey of that, which is a bit overdue, and so we could figure out how to make improvements so that the current drainage problems can be solved concurrent with
Good.
all of this
Excellent.
work.
Thank you both.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Anything from Charles?
Charles, are you still
he's-
on?
didn't
No,
he have to recuse
has
himself?
recused.
Oh, sorry.
He's recused.
Recused.
Mark has a.
Oh, Mark, do you have your hand up? Can we get Mark on? Thanks.
Okay, I'll just be brief, but since Peter asked about the heart reaction, we gave them, and I summarized and have my notes in front of me, 12 major suggestions reference the guidelines between mass and scale, open space, pedestrian scale, architectural character, et cetera, et cetera. So I was encouraged that I heard John this evening, who was the only one of the people in tonight's meeting that was on the phone or on the meeting with us, say that they're redesigning. So hopefully we had a fruitful discussion of what the guideline compliance would be. But Peter, to your specific point about height, which is on the PUD request, the building as they had designed it, and again, they just acknowledged they're breaking it up into smaller pieces. We're talking mostly about the Canyonlands West, the west portion, which will be great. But it was a full 10 feet taller at the entrance of town than the adjacent commercial space next to Clark's there, and absent the decorative tower. And so I would encourage you to not carte blanche, give a 40-foot height, which would be a full 10 feet taller at the entrance to town. I think it's going to be, I don't think it will comply with the mass and scale guidelines. And so I would just encourage you to not make that part of this discussion. And of course, there's right of way and setback issues that you still have to deliberate. But the height is what I wanted to comment on. And I feel that it just wouldn't be compliant with the context of the neighborhood, as Peter, you well know, serving on Hart for 6 years or 7 years. So thank you.
8.
Who's counting?
Yeah, it seemed like 2 years, right?
We also have a member of the public, Daniel Zemke, who wants to come. Oh, sorry. Is it not time for public comment yet? No. I'm going to make that decision. I think we're going to go to public comment now. Then we'll go to deliberation. Okay. We can put the, so Daniel, you can speak.
Hi, thank you. I live in Mendota and I appreciate the efforts of the design team. I have a couple of concerns that I want to echo, one of which was the traffic concerns. I think you absolutely have to take into consideration the 8:15 to 9 a.m. window, which was talked about. Furthermore, the afternoon traffic really is from 3 to just about 5:30. It's brutal to try and turn left and head west, leaving the Mendota area. The other concerns I have are, I would like to know what the net effect would be on unit size or numbers if you do not vacate the right of way. The reason being is that is a really pleasant walk down to Clark's. It gets really dangerous. I will tell you, as far as drainage, which has already been raised in the wintertime, that sidewalk between the Tower House and almost to the Canyonlands spot is like an ice rink. So you're going to have some grading issues that need to be addressed there. But I'd like to know, what that net effect would be as far as units if you don't go into the right of way. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have some more public comments. Let's just take them from the top and go down.
I'm reading Carrie Koenig.
Thank you. Carrie?
Hi, thank you for bringing this proposal to the table. I feel like I've heard so many people running for council begging for public-private partnerships, so I want to commend you on pursuing this. I live at the Telluride Lodge. I see on your plans a lot of the sidewalks that are internal, and then that would help pedestrians connect both east, west, and north. My concern is for pedestrian connectivity to the south. We're expecting a lot more development in the years to come in the Lift 7 area. And I think the connectivity, the pedestrian connectivity between this development and the Lift 7 area needs to be better thought through, because Telluride Lodge is going to become the main thoroughfare. It's a private property. It's a very nice property, but I'm not sure that the residents there are ready for their hallways to become the main way that residents of this new proposal get to the ski lifts. And along Tomboy, that's a somewhat of a very icy, dangerous pedestrian walkway, north-south. You've mentioned the drainage problems between the Tomboy Lodge and the Tower House, and that is a huge problem. The ice builds there and it gets so thick, they can't get it out with a plow. And at the end of the year, they come with heavy machinery and chip out blocks of ice. It's treacherous. And there seems to be a bottleneck there of cars that are doing that jog and taking a shortcut to Carhenge. and pedestrians that are walking kind of in the middle of the street to avoid walking behind cars parked that are pulling in and out, and snow shed from adjacent buildings such as the Tomboy Lodge has huge hanging ice blocks. And so you tend to have pedestrians walking in the middle of the street, just trying to get between Main Street and the Lift 7 area. So I would like to see a plan for pedestrian connection between this development and Lift 7. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
I'm muting Anita Cody.
Anita, you're unmuted. She's unmuted.
Okay, Anita, try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
sorry. Thank you, Chair and Commission. My name is Anita Cody. I live at 627 West Colorado, which is catty corner from the Tower House and Canyonland projects at Cornett and West Colorado. I appreciate the town is working on workforce housing projects on its many acres within the town limits. I wish to voice my concern about the proposed reduction of the number of parking spaces for the project. Boomerang Village, located at 136 South Tomboy, which is catty corner from the Tower House and behind Mendota on the south side, had parking eliminated for the Mendota workforce housing project. When Mendota was built, the town removed parking from the Boomerang Village HOA area and provided a few designated permitted parking spaces on the 600 block of West Colorado in front of Mendota. I know that this was discussed, but Boomerang Village has a BV, standing for Boomerang Village, for Boomerang Village. It's a zone for Boomerang Village. There are more times than not when the Mendota owners park in the town designated BV zone that was traded for the parking that was removed, leaving no space for Boomerang Village owners. This has left Boomerang Village owners with very limited parking. I, as a property manager, manage Boomerang Village, thus I know these problems. Living across from Mendota, I see where some of these owners have at least 2 and up to 3 to 4 vehicles. I am not sure if that project also reduced the required parking allotment in their development process. A few years ago, the town did create parking spaces on the north side of the 600 block of West Colorado, which is directly across from Mendota, and it's right in front of our home. Those spaces on most days are used by the Mendota owners, typically more than any other of our neighborhood residents. The Hotel Telluride is also in our neighborhood. Their guests don't want to pay to park in the parking garage due to the fee charged, so they are directed to park on Cornett or West Columbia Streets, which is catty corner from this project before us. Then in 2017, Tomboy Lodge HOA, which is located 1 block away and north of this project, was issued a notice of violation by the town of Telluride, as the complex did not have enough parking spaces allotted on the property for the amount of condos and units. It took many years and a good amount of money to correct the parking issue. It's a mixed accommodations and residential project. My point here is that if you reduce the required parking allotment, where are your residents for the Tower House and Canyonlands projects going to park? The streets are already full from Mendota, Boom Village, Hotel Telluride, and other homes in the neighborhood. How can you guarantee that these residents won't have a car or won't have 2 to 4 cars like your Mendota project? I respectfully request that you allow at least 1 parking space for each unit, if not more. If the town of Telluride required the Tomboy Lodge to provide enough parking on its own property, the town should follow its own rules and provide enough parking for its project and not privy to exemptions. I appreciate the commission for allowing public comment and hope that my heartfelt and sensible comments are considered in the development process and corrected. Thank you.
Thank you. Tiffany, we have some more.
I'm reading Patricia Chandler.
Thank you. Patricia?
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. Did you guys consider underground parking?
The applicants are not here, not responding to questions from the public. But you can put that concern out there and we can address it.
Okay, yeah, so I have concern about the space being utilized for parking when it could be underground. And also concerns about why the height needs to be exceeded by the town specifications.
Thank you.
Okay, unmuting Deanna.
Deanna, go ahead.
Yeah, Doug and Deanna Baggy, we're owners in Telluride Lodge. First of all, thanks for the public comment. I think it is important that we do get some affordable deed restricted housing. So I think this is a good project. But like people before us spoke, parking definitely will be the issue. One space per unit or even bedroom is gonna probably get exceeded. So the parking is going to be stressed, and where I see the parking being stressed the most is on the south side parking, right on Tomboy of Telluride Lodge. That's already a difficult parking management problem for Telluride Lodge. It's only going to get stressed more. And also the west side of Clark's is going to get stressed. Those are going to be kind of the stressed areas, as well as the speaker before us mentioned. Currently, yeah, we're not in favor of the height variation either. But yeah, the parking is going to be an issue no matter what. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there more public Is there more public?
Seeing no additional public comment online.
We have some public comment in the room. Please go ahead.
Get my glasses on so I can read my notes. I'm Sandy Gorley. My wife and I own the west side of the Mountain House complex. We've been there 5.5 years. The owners of the other half have owned it since 1989. So we certainly support, as everybody else has said, the overall goals and understand these sites are going to be developed by the town and the purpose of it. I think honestly, you know, our assessment is that these sites are just crammed full. My understanding of the process the town has gone through is to give a target to the developer as part of this PPP. And I think we see the result here right now. Relative to what the commission is looking at in terms of the trade-off of public benefits versus deviations from the guidance. You know, I'd point out that right away right now is a public benefit. I have the privilege of seeing the interactions on there daily of folk going along there. I'm sorry to hear that folk are slipping. I have a feeling I might be responsible for fixing that. I don't know how that works, but you know, in general, that is a very peaceful zone. I don't understand the comments from the planners about needing to make it more contiguous and needing to restore the streetscape. This is the streetscape. This is west of the historic district. This is not crammed up. You know, I overall appreciate the Mendota development, but it is crammed up there. I heard today about flooding problems. So that's a problem. You know, just so you know, Cornet Creek runs right through my townhouse, the old flood map. So it's not a coincidence that there's a problem here that has to be dealt with. So I saw a graphic showing a connection on north-south connection against my property. So I just want to be clear that, thank you, that is a there's a utility right away there for the town, but that is our property beyond the retaining wall. That building is going to be 3 stories high, 4 stories at the south end, excuse me. And I heard discussion about making a walkway there. Well, I don't think anybody's going to walk through there right 5 feet from a 4-story building with snow shed coming right down there. So I would suggest, I saw that come up the other day. I would suggest that's not very realistic with those building locations. If you move the building location, building 1 to the west, which causes other problems, I understand. But then maybe there's something that could be done, but with that layout, I don't see that as being a realistic depiction. So I appreciate your time. Everybody else has summarized the rest of our comments, so thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we had one more in the room. Yes, please go ahead.
I'm Matthew Hintermeister. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. I live at 700 West Colorado Avenue, otherwise known as the Clark's Building. I live in the north east unit. I have 4 openings in my apartment. The current plan will annihilate 2 of the 4. When I bought the condo, I thought I could depend on the lot lines as drawn. And as you notice, the lot line is a diagonal. And so it would preserve that one window on the corner there so that I would still have a view to the east. I think that the vacation of the public right-of-way should be a non-starter here. I noticed that the developer only showed pictures of the quote sidewalk. It's not really the sidewalk. It's just the little new area that they put when they added parking on the street. The real sidewalk, which I'm sure you've all walked, is quite beautiful. It's very green. It's open. It's a nice experience. It's also heavily used because I see it from my living room every day. I don't understand if this were not a developer partnering with the town, I don't think this would ever be considered. So I am thankful for Hark. They were very clear with how they felt, and it was a tough meeting for the applicant. So I hope that they heard those recommendations, and I certainly would stress to P&Z that the public right-of-way not be vacated. And I also want to add my concern of the parking like everyone else has. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comment either online?
We have one more online.
Okay, great.
I'm muting Lars Carlson.
Thank you. Lars, go ahead.
Hey, everyone, it's Lars here. As you know, I live right adjacent to the high school. I spend a lot of time walking to Clark's or walking my dog in the neighborhood. I really think we need to be, this is the gateway into Telluride. This is what everyone sees as they drive into town. And I think we have to be incredibly cautious as to what we allow. Building over the lot line, like Matt said, or Mr. Hintmeister said, I don't think that would be allowed if it were a private developer. I know they're partnering with town, and so they want to get as many units on. I also think parking is a huge problem everywhere in the Southwest area plan. And I think we have to enforce parking on site wherever possible, because you look at places where we made exceptions and it doesn't work out in the long run. So I think that's something to be aware of. But really, when you drive into town with this building jutting out, it's really going to affect people's first impression of Telluride. And I think that's very important for us as a community that lives here. I'd love to see as much affordable housing as possible, but I don't want to see it at the negative effects affecting all of us in our daily life. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Mark has his hand up again. Mark?
Oh, just a very brief follow-up. As we talked about mass and scale, we talked about parking, the right of way. There are many ways to skin a cat, but the people in Telluride Lodge commented at our meeting that, well, they had underground pipe parking, and they asked the same question as one of the public comments tonight, why not underground? But underground pipe parking, which is not something we adjudicate, would solve not just mass scale issues, but the parking issues and part of this whole open space issue. It just, and it's less than $500,000 roughly probably for that raft foundation technique, which is standard operating procedure in neighborhoods like this. So just wanted to follow up with that comment because it kills about 4 or 5 issues if that's something the applicant would consider. So thank you very much. Sorry.
Thank you. What, would the applicants like to respond to any of the public comment or comment further before we go to board deliberation? I see no.
Well, I mean, I guess,
Go ahead.
we certainly can. I just wasn't sure if you would like us to.
Please.
Okay. So I guess just kind of overall on the parking, I mean, it's really helpful to hear all of the public comment. You all live in the community every day and you know what's happening there, and we really value your input to help us understand the area as well as we can. And it's helpful for us to understand what are the key things that we're going to need to address in our design as we move forward. So I guess just want to thank everyone who took time to come to the meeting and share your thoughts and let you know that we're happy to hear them. I do think that on the parking, it seems like the parking is certainly a main point of concern. One thing that we did mention during the presentation is that the parking that's being proposed on site is new parking that we would be constructing to serve this project, and working with the town to appropriately designate it and sign it accordingly. And just using that strategy to utilize some of the right of way to provide those parking spaces. There were questions asked about, if we don't vacate the right of way, what is the result on the overall development and what would be lost as far as number of affordable housing units? And I think we could respond to that if you'd like us to, and just kind of speak to what we gain through the right of way vacation and what would potentially not be able to be accommodated.
Sure.
John, do you want to address that?
Sure. So a big part of what would we'd kind of run into would be that if we adjust the buildings back, it impacts the parking in a negative way. So we would end up losing parking stalls even more than the small exception that we're asking for. If we were to cut the building back, essentially on the northwest building, we would probably lose up to about 6 units out of the development itself. On the east building, we could lose an additional 2 units. And then on the condo buildings, those as well would end up becoming much smaller units that may not be as functional if we were to adjust those buildings to where they don't come out to the right of way. It's really, when we look at the design standards, it really talks a lot about reinforcing like the existing grids. And we feel that this is really helping do that by bringing the buildings forward. If you look at the rest of the street, like we're still behind that line of where all the other houses front and all the other buildings front. And I really feel like this is going to help kind of make this feel more as though it's part of the town versus it being completely separate by being pulled back and just feeling like a different part of town. The other question that came up was the roof. I did want to address that quickly.
Hey, John, real quick though, while we're on parking, do you all want to speak to the underground parking?
Yeah, so that is a very difficult thing to do on this site, purely because we're already parking kind of a partial underground as it is, because we're pushing against that front setback. The site kind of gets steeper right there, and so we're retaining a little bit, and so it's actually a partially underground parking already. If we were to go even further, that drive aisle would not be functional, so you wouldn't be able to enter the site because it would get so steep to get to the underground portion of a parking garage that It just wouldn't be feasible. The other issues are, if you go deep enough, there's groundwater issues that we would run into, and it would really impact the affordable nature of this project and make the units unviable in some instances depending on how we address that. So this surface parking with the tuck under is really the most economical and is going to provide the most housing at an affordable rate. So.
Yeah, and one other thing just to note as it relates to managing the parking, the only parking reduction that's requested is on the Canyonland site, which is a rental property. And so those are all going to be rental apartments with property management and leasing requirements. And so just given the nature of the rental management, there is an ability to provide some more controls over how parking is allocated and how it's managed, as Garrett mentioned in our presentation.
You mean you could use tandem spaces?
Oh, just Garrett, I don't know if you want to speak any more to this.
Sure. There's different property management strategies that we can, and lease up strategies that we can deploy. For instance, some units or a portion of units could be no car units, meaning you're not permitted to have a car and live on property for a certain number of units. And other rural resort communities will increase the wait list priority for those that agree to not bring a car to the property.
Right. And just the on-site property management would be in charge of, how the overall parking is functioning and who's parking where, and ensuring that it's being, properly maintained and plowed and utilized by the people who are supposed to be parking in those spaces. So that's just the benefit of a rental property that has on-site rental property management versus a for sale type product. So just something to note. And then building height was another thing that was discussed. So I don't know if you want us to respond to concerns about building height.
Sure.
Yeah, so I can answer that. And we really did listen to Hark's feedback, and we actually watched the video a couple of times and took really good notes. And one of the things we're doing to address that comment about the adjacency to Clark's is we created a 2-story element along that side of the building. And so the building really does step down an entire story next to Clark's. And so we are addressing and we are hearing what everyone's asking us for. And so when it comes to height, Canyonlands, like I said, we really stepped that. We're excited to show that one to you. The east building on Canyonlands is about 9 feet underneath the max height. And so we're not even asking for any extra height on that building at all. And then the other tower house site, because we moved the bedrooms into the attic space, instead of having them on the ground floor to get those up out of the floodplain, we are only asking for about 1.5 to 2 feet of extra height in certain areas of those buildings to accommodate that extra bedroom. So we are listening to that kind of concern and doing our best to keep these buildings as low profile as possible.
Yeah, I think the new design that you see as we move forward with Hark and with the preliminary PUD, you're going to see a lot of responsiveness to what we've heard on mass and scale and building height, and just very strategic requests for additional building height only in certain locations.
Thank you. If there's no more public comment, we should move to, and no more comment from them, we'll move to board discussion. Oh, sorry, Karen. Thank you.
Would it be possible for the applicants to explain what the resulting right-of-way vacation, what would be the width of the right-of-way if that area is vacated, and compare that to what is in the historic right-of-way to the east?
Yeah, we have been working on just sort of evaluating the existing condition, the information that's been provided by Public Works as far as all the various needs for widths of drive lanes and landscaping and turning radiuses and parking and all of it. And just starting to figure out how to lay out the right of way and the front property line to ensure that we're going to be able to, I think it was 74 feet that's needed to accommodate everything that was listed in Public Works memo, all the various dimensions needed for the different components of the right-of-way improvements and snow storage, et cetera, sidewalk widths. So it's still a bit of a work in progress, but what we're trying to do is understand the needs and then be responsive to ensuring that we are providing the right width and the right alignment so it functions as needed, which is kind of what Ron was saying. But it's a bit of a work in progress. Does anyone else from the team want to say any more about that?
Yeah, Commissioner, the short answer to your question is yes, we can, and we will get you that information. Kate is right. It is in flux right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, seeing no further comment, we'll turn to board discussion. I'll say something. You go first. I'll go first this time. So I have a strong predisposition against vacating the right of way, especially in this spot. This is the gateway to town. This is a very busy spot. And as Karen just pointed out, we have a, in the historic section, we have a wide Main Street, and it makes no sense to have a narrow, barely 2-lane section right before and then have it widen up in the middle. That seems backwards to me. So yes, I realize that we're getting, 55 beds. That's great. We love affordable housing, but I'm not sure that is something I can support even with that. And so I would be advocating to pull the buildings back. If that does something to the number of units or to the parking, that's a trade-off I would, I guess, be willing to accept, because I don't see the right of way vacation is happening. I won't vote for it given this trade-off. Yes, Kathy.
There's some things that I think we maybe all of our board will agree on. I think the site coverage being increased we haven't heard any comments from anybody about that. So I think that's an easy thing to think of allowing. And I think the 3 small lots of 1,500 square feet, again, that's an easy thing. When you own a condo, these are townhouses, but when you own a condo, you really don't own land around them, so per se. So I think those 2 requests are easy. Building height, it sounds like maybe that's been addressed. I wish I knew tonight, and I don't think you guys know because you're just redesigning, like what percentage. I don't want to say you can have 40 feet over the whole project. I want to, say you can have up to 40 feet height or above, or certain, you can go over 35 feet, possibly up to 40 feet for 20% of the building roofs, or some number that works. But I don't want to want you to feel like there's carte blanche to go the whole 40 feet everywhere. So I'm really struggling with that. Parking, this area is severely underparked. The whole town is severely underparked, but this might be worse than some of the other areas. I like the idea that the rental units, you can only keep your unit if you follow the rules and you have no cars or 1 car, or I should say vehicles, because you can have a truck instead of having three secret cars. So I'm struggling with the parking variance, and I'm struggling with the right of way. It kind of seems like if you're going to create the new parking in the right of way, and I really like those parking places in front of Clark's. I like the way they function. I like the way they look. But if you're going to do that, then you shouldn't be also pushing the buildings into the right of way. It's like, I think you need to make a tough choice. Do you want those 6 parking spaces, or do you want to encroach in the right of, ask for a right of way vacation, but ask for the smallest one you can make work? and maybe we end up with 2 less units. I can't see that it makes a huge difference in the for sale units. You're just gonna cut down on, you're not gonna lose a whole unit. You're just gonna have a few smaller rooms. That's not a big deal. It's gonna be hard in the westernmost building. You're gonna probably use a unit or 2, but that's maybe what needs to happen for this to get approved.
Other comments? Yeah.
I agree with Kathy. I think that this, to ask for the largest vacation is not the right move right now. I feel like, we all have concerns about the entry and the crowding of the neighborhood. Parking is obviously a big issue, but I agree that the site coverage is an easy one. The 3 small lots are easy one. Even the height, it'd be a lot easier to see where those height variances were, to approve it. But I would say to actually take a look at that vacation and try to minimize that, because I think you would get a big win on that.
Kathy, you brought up the height as a concern and not wanting to leave it wide open, and hearing Hark's comments on that. It appears that the top of the building is the roof is not occupiable,
Okay.
for one. It looks like trusses, or I don't know if there's mechanical or anything utilized within that space, or if it's volume to the benefit of the units below. But I don't see windows letting light in or skylights or anything like that. I will say, this is the application I looked at and that we are responding to. I'm glad they're redesigning and not waiting. I think they got some serious comments from what we've heard, and are not wasting time. And I understand time to be of the essence. I am also, though, reluctant to be able to respond to what this height ask actually is. And I would prefer to give the applicants time to provide revised materials. I therefore have questions just about what the right way to proceed is, with the range of things, serious parking concerns with the neighborhood. I would like them, within the process they're engaged in, to be able to provide parking to meet the land use code. I don't know if they will not get there, but we have heard a lot of commentary about challenges and circulation. I think Main Street concerns are legitimate with the streetscape and the impression and the overall kind of the feeling of the width from facade to facade. This is a bent portion of non-historic Main Street, but it deserves that kind of scrutiny. I would agree. So Eleni, I don't know that I take it off the table, but I am skeptical about the increase into the right of way, and would just put that into the category. You really gotta show us your landscape chops and prove that this is somehow better, which seems somewhat challenging to me.
Well, Kathy.
So are you suggesting that we do a continuance tonight?
Yeah, so the options I'm familiar with are approval, continuance, denial, or is there something else that I've forgotten? But okay.
Do you have any advice here?
Well, you can approve with conditions that some of these things be addressed with the preliminary plan, but it doesn't sound like that's your direction.
Well, that's it's possible. So to me, the question is, I'd like to hear your feedback, I guess, Ron, if being able to create an approval tonight, we're not eliminating or removing our ability to comment critically about what we're seeing with these revisions in whatever these categories that might get conceptually approved.
I mean, it sounds like the direction that I'm hearing is the vacation of right of way, the parking reductions are concerns. So these are concerns that can be brought back to you and addressed with the preliminary plan that's submitted. Or if you prefer a continuance, we could, I haven't discussed this with the applicant, but there is the possibility we could get it on the November 16 agenda if that's time for them to be able to respond before it goes forward for preliminary plan approval.
I would be inclined, and you can change my mind here, I would be inclined to a continuance, because I think these are very basic things. And if we approved all these things, I don't see the right of way mentioned anywhere in here. And I'm a little concerned that that'll just, get by us, without addressing the concerns of the board.
Yeah, I kind of agree for a continuance, because I don't, it's an interlocking puzzle. If we want more parking, but we want less right away vacation or less intrusions of buildings, to respect the south right of way line, I'll call it south because it's kind of south. So I think it's all interlocking, height, parking and right of way, and we've got some things that we think are fine, the site coverage and the lot size, the 3 small lots, but I would be much more comfortable to see different diagrammatics and see the expression of some of the heart concerns before conceptual and before they invest a whole lot more money into the preliminary. I don't want to put the brakes on at preliminary. I'd rather put the brakes on now. I think it's better for the developer to tell them early to make some radical changes. And they've got to figure out the money. Do they do more 1-bedroom and efficiency units? Does that generate more rent? And get rid of some of the 2s or shrinking things, or do they just drop a unit or 2 and keep all the 2 bedrooms? That's not my kind of math.
I think that we have concerns that are at the sort of basic level, and that we would be better served by trying to continue this. And if they can't do it in November, we'll do it whenever they can. But to get a better sense of some of how they propose to address some of these concerns. I agree. All right.
May I ask a question of Ron?
Sure.
Ron, I'm just trying to get to understand the adjustments that would happen to the schedule, because what we've discussed is targeting a submittal date of November 13th for a preliminary PUD and subdivision that would be heard in December. So if we were to move forward with putting some conditions on that November 13th submittal, then that would enable us to work over the next few weeks on responding to these concerns. If we were to continue to a meeting in November, what would that mean for a submittal date to turn around something that responds? I'm just not quite sure how that would work.
The December meeting is also early in the month, both November and December. So it could affect the possibility of getting in front of P and Z or for the preliminary plan in December. It may push it back to January.
This is what it is.
This is what it is. Yeah, it's big issues.
Yeah, I mean, if we continue to November and they come back with something that addresses our concern, we will approve the conceptual PUD, and they can come back in December and submit whatever the next step is.
There's not time. They would have to submit for December before we have the November hearing. So that means
Yeah.
we're moving them to January, we're losing a month. And the way you gamble on that, or the way I used to gamble when I was a builder developer, is I'd start doing my structurals before I had approvals and know that I might be throwing away a ton of money, but that's the way you make up that month.
I think James wants to say something.
Hey, James Anhuser with town staff. This is at your pleasure. We have no comments or interest in controlling your schedule. That we don't, whatever it is, that's what it is. I can say this team works very fast. So would be excited to watch them turn things around and keep things on track. But please do not make any considerations on scheduling for us. Do whatever you think is appropriate.
Very good.
Thank you.
So would you like to make a motion, Kathy?
Yeah, I would like to continue the Canyon Lands and Tower House Affordable Housing Conceptual Large Scale PUD at Lot 3, block 1 of the Canyonland subdivision and at 650, 652, and 654 West Colorado Avenue, requesting the 4 variations as stated in the staff memo. And the direction I will give, the direction I want the applicant to respond to is the increased site coverage is okay. This extra small lot sizes are okay. They need to address height. They need to address parking and creating more parking spaces. And they need to have a plan that will minimize the right-of-way vacations and the encroachments of buildings that would require a bigger right-of-way vacation.
I can second that.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? All right, the motion carries. The application is continued.
I'm sorry, did you do that specific, date specific, date specific?
The date that we wanted is for November 16th.
Or later, if that's preferred.
We would be happy to, we will consider it the 16th if the applicants are ready. All right, is there any board and staff discussion? Ron,
No
other
discussion.
members of the board? No?
I have nothing.
All right, it is,
Oh, I do have something. So Kathy and I attended a meeting last night. Is this appropriate time?
I
Kat?
think so, yeah.
We went to county
and
planning board, and they were having a work session and 25 or so people, Kathy and myself included.
Lachey was
I was there, yeah.
Yep.
And then I got online when it was
um,
4 hours.
I didn't stick around for the, I spoke briefly and Doug Tooley, whatever came on, and I went home. So I don't know how it wrapped up. But Dan, you were there and spoke as well. So I am sort of following up on that. It's a rather large effort going on around us out in the county, and will be something I'm gonna tune into more. So.
But I do think what you're bringing up and what I'm thinking is the town, each of us as individuals might have concerns, but the town should have concerns because there's an either accidental or intentional, I think it's more accidental potential for a huge development increase that would grossly affect the town. I'm not sure that even our new yet to be determined water sewer treatment plant can handle the potential build out. And it's not going to be able to expand. I'm not sure that we have the water in the region to handle it. I don't know that, I don't think the spur was ever intended to be 4 lanes to handle the traffic coming into town. So I think this is something as a board that we really do need to watch, and whether we'll have to weigh in individually instead of board members, but.
Did we ever get a chance to have them maybe present?
yeah, I thought we had asked that they.
We
might
requested
want-
it.
We requested. it, they might-
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to talk to Kay Simonson about getting in front of the P and Z, but
Well, I think that would be helpful. If not, we'll continue to comment. We can all read what's on the website, I guess. And,
Sorry.
Lance, would you like to say something?
This Lance, I don't think they referred it to the town yet. I think there's a process by which they refer it to neighboring jurisdictions and things like that for their comment.
Got it.
I don't think that's happened yet,
But it will.
But
but that's kind of my understanding. I don't know. what's-
I mean, the staff seem to be pushing for a pretty quick approval process. One of my neighbors that I talked to after the meeting, she thinks they slowed down because they got so much comments, have so many things to address, and there's several large items they forgot. Like an airport, childcare, just things that were never mentioned. But you think it's gonna be for referral, whether, I don't know if we need to ask or remind them, but this is a really big deal, and we need to have a presentation to us, and we need to have time to give them our input
Why
from this
can't-
board as well as from town council. I
Yeah,
mean,
why
it's
can't
scary.
we go ahead and hear from them?
Yeah,
before they
no, I
refer?
definitely follow the process, have Ron contact the county and say, hey, you guys would like to have a session with the consultants and
And give them our feedback and Yeah, I mean, let's go ahead and do that as soon as they can, so we don't.
And if we want to schedule a special meeting, we can consider that as well.
Yes.
November 16 is getting pretty lengthy for the next
Okay.
meeting.
I think it's worth it.
Anything else? No? All right. It is now 8:58 and I adjourn this meeting by unanimous consent.